Chapter 772. Yu Qianchou tilted his head and asked, "Unless what?" "It's just a legend, I don't know if it's true or not." Immortal Crocodile seemed to have recalled a distant memory and said slowly, "It's said that the techniques in the demonic book are too heaven-defying, and the requirements for cultivation talent are also extremely high. Not everyone is qualified to cultivate all of the techniques, not even the descendants of the demon god. Rumor has it that the most talented demon lords in the past only managed to cultivate 2/3 of the techniques, and the further they go the more powerful the techniques are. However, this demonic book has been cursed by the demon god with the demon god great technique, and the latter parts of the heaven-defying techniques cannot be peaked at unless one cultivates the demonic book. In other words, if one wants to cultivate the later parts of the heaven-defying techniques, the cultivator of the demonic book must gradually break through the layers of restrictions according to the progress of his cultivation, or else he will be devoured by the demonic book. This should also be a way for the demon god to protect his descendants. It's said that the method used by the demon lords to cultivate the demonic book is not authentic, and the real way to cultivate the demonic book is to choose a person to cultivate according to one of the techniques in the demonic book. However, this technique is too cruel and those who go through the test almost die. It's difficult to find a suitable successor to cultivate the demonic book out of 100,000 cultivators. The demon lords of the past naturally did not dare to take this risk, and only managed to cultivate the demonic book with the help of the previous demon lord. Because of this, none of the demon lords in the past were able to cultivate the entire demonic book. And those who can withstand the test of the technique are the most qualified to cultivate the demonic book, be it in terms of physical or mental toughness. There's another saying, I don't know if it's a rumor, but it's probably not groundless. It's said that the son of the demon god, the first demon lord, said this. He said that those who can withstand the test of the technique will be favored by the demon god of the realm of the gods, and will be regarded as the true successor to the demonic book. In times of crisis, they will be protected by the demon god, and their cultivation speed will be twice as fast as ordinary people. Yu Qianchou seemed to be listening to a fairy tale and said with some doubt, "According to what you said, Yan Zhuixing will not have the chance to obtain the help of the third demon lord to cultivate the demonic book. He was still sealed in the devil realm. And you also said that those who cultivate the demonic book must forge a demonic body. You can't possibly be telling me that Yan Zhuixing, that fellow, had passed the test of the great law and obtained the favor of the demon god, right? Damn it. Old monster, can you not scare me? The strongest person in the 3 realms back then, the successor of the fiend god. I'm just saying, don't take it to heart. Maybe that Xing you mentioned only cultivated a magic art similar to the blood escape, and the demonic codex could not have been passed down to the human world. The key is that even if you want to cultivate the demonic codex, the previous generations of demon kings were not willing to teach it to outsiders. Otherwise, it would shake the fiend celestial lineage's dominance in the fiend world. Think about it, is that even possible?" Immortal Lord Crocodile laughed. Yu Qianchou thought about it and agreed, but he could not help but ask, "Have you heard of any of the previous demon kings who cultivated the little devil fist?" Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned and said doubtfully, "The little devil fist seems to be the primary cultivation technique in the demonic book. I heard that it progresses to the little devil fist, great devil fist and sky devil fist. The previous demon kings could only use the sky devil fist, and it is said that there is a higher level which is the demon god fist used by the demon god. Yu Qianchou, how do you know about the little devil fist? Did you hear it from someone or that Xing really knows the little devil fist?" Yu Qianchou scratched his face with a dazed expression, and instead of answering he asked, "Have you heard of the demon eye?" Immortal Lord Crocodile's face twitched and he said awkwardly, "All the previous demon kings have cultivated the demon eye. It is said that the demon eye has an evil art called demon eye ecstasy, which can control people. You can't be saying that that person knows these 2 demonic arts, right?" Yu Qianchou was a little stupefied. There was no need to ask any further. He didn't know what kind of dog's hit luck that bastard had, but he was actually cultivating the demonic book. Just the name alone was enough to tell that it was amazing. Hee. Don't worry, so what if he is cultivating the demonic book? Aren't you going to teach him a lesson? She could kill him before his demonic cultivation was complete, and there would be nothing left to do. If there is no other way, I will do it myself. I can't let a scourge like him live, Immortal Lord Crocodile said kindly. Yu Qianchou was a little depressed. There was something he had to say and he finally could not help but ask, "Old monster, it is impossible for him to forge a demonic body and cultivate the demonic book. Because the demon king who can help him is still sealed in the demonic world. Could it be that he really passed some bullsh** T test and became the true successor of the demonic book that was favored by the demon god? My luck can't be that bad, right? How could I step on such smelly shit? Hee hee. How is that possible?" Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head and laughed. "Rumor has it that the successor who is favored by the demon god will be protected by the demon god. Under normal circumstances, it is very difficult to kill him." Difficult to kill? Yu Qianchou's face turned green. He immediately thought of the battle with Yan Zhuixing in Lingfang Valley. That guy had been hit by his absorbing stars technique. He was clearly dead, but in the end he came back to life. He had never been able to figure it out, but he did not expect to find the answer today. Could that bastard really be the successor of the demon god? "What's wrong with you?" Immortal Lord Crocodile asked suspiciously. Yu Qianchou came back to his senses. He decided not to tell the old monster about the terrifying answer, lest it scared him. Anyone would be afraid of going against the demon god. Suddenly, a ridiculous thought flashed through his mind. Back when Master Bai Changchun was on Obedient Island, he had said that his goal was to fight the demon god. With the old man's abnormal progress, that day might really come, although the chances were slim. Immortal Lord Crocodile asked again, "What's wrong with you? Are you scared out of your wits?" Yu Qianchou stared at Immortal Lord Crocodile and thought, so what if Yan Zhuixing is really the successor of the demon god? Since Master has the courage to challenge the demon god, then each generation should be stronger than the previous one. Don't tell me that as a disciple, I don't have the courage to defeat the demon god's successor? Moreover, the other party had already been defeated by me, so what's there to be afraid of? Master, work harder and fight against the demon god. Leave the little one to me. Yu Qianchou jumped off the bed and said disdainfully, "Scared out of your wits? Bullsh**. Let's go and deal with him now." Immortal Lord Crocodile also jumped off the bed and laughed. "Okay, I'll go and broaden my horizons. I'll see how powerful the legendary demonic book is." Yu Qianchou pretended to throw a few silver balls. When Immortal Lord Crocodile closed his eyes, the two disappeared from the house. In a call not far from the center of Lingfang Valley, which was also the location where Yu Qianchou had started tracking Xen Laosen, the two suddenly appeared. After being pushed by Yu Qianchou, Immortal Lord Crocodile opened his eyes and looked around. He was about to ask something, but Yu Qianchou made a shushing gesture and sent a voice transmission. Using voice transmission. "We're not far from the target. Be careful not to be hurt." Immortal Lord Crocodile asked curiously, "Aren't you going to kill him? Are you afraid of being heard? Are you going to ambush him?" What a joke. Ambush is needed to deal with him. Yu Qianchou curled his lips and said, "This is called being cautious. It's not too late to make a move after figuring out the situation. That guy is not easy to deal with. Let's go. Let's observe first." Immortal Lord Crocodile smiled and did not say anything. He found this guy interesting. So he followed Yu Qianchou out of the call. Yu Qianchou looked around and his eyes fell on a small hill where he could see the entire landscape of Lingfang Valley. He pointed at his feet and a hole quickly appeared in the ground. He gestured to Immortal Lord Crocodile to follow him and walked down. Earth manipulation? Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at the hole under his feet and was speechless. He could control fire and earth. What other magical abilities did this guy have? He silently followed him into the hole. The hole behind him closed silently, and the passage in front of him continued to expand. Not long after, there was a flash of light in front of them. Two small openings the size of a head appeared. Yu Qianchou stood in front of one of the openings and watched silently. Immortal Lord Crocodile curiously walked to the other opening and saw that it was covered by short grass. It was easy for people inside to see through the gaps in the grass, but it was difficult for people outside to see these two openings. It was really a good place to observe. This guy was really talented. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked back and was stunned again. He saw that a chair made of soil had appeared under Yu Qianchou's butt. The height was very suitable and he was leisurely and indifferently looking outside. "Hey." Immortal Lord Crocodile poked Yu Qianchou and pointed under his butt. "You can't be too selfish. Don't just care about yourself." Yu Qianchou did not say anything. With a wave of his hand, A chair made of soil immediately rose from the ground for Immortal Lord Crocodile to sit on. At this time the group of people in Lingfang Valley would never have thought that there were two people sitting under the almost bare hill opposite them staring at them. On the roof of the abode, Ninth Exon was standing vigilantly and observing the surroundings. Below, Yan Zhuixing was sitting on a table with his eyes closed confidently. Behind him were 8th Exon Yanyu and the Allure Beauty. Lu Yanqing sat on a bench, silently biting her lips as she stared at Yan Zhuixing opposite her. After seeing the distribution of people in the abode clearly, Yu Qianchou transmitted his voice. Old monster, the guy sitting on the table is my target. How dare he act like a hooligan in front of me? Damn it. I want to deal with him personally. The two women behind him are already controlled by the demon eye. They are the people I want to save. As for the others, it doesn't matter. I will save them if I can, but it doesn't matter if I can't. When you receive my signal, you must do your best to save the two women. Be careful, they are already controlled by the demon eye. They may resist or harm themselves. You must subdue them in one fell swoop. Don't let me have any worries. Hee hee. Don't worry, leave the two women to me. I won't let you have any worries. I want to see what you have to deal with that soul formation brat. Immortal Lord Crocodile's words sounded like he was watching a show. He was stunned. Those two women are your women? Chapter 773. His tone seemed to be saying that he was unlucky to have two women being controlled by someone else. Yu Qianchou glanced at him and said indifferently, one of them is my master's wife. Master's wife? Immortal Lord Crocodile was slightly surprised. Bai Changchun's image immediately appeared in his mind and he said solemnly, go ahead and do it. Although it will be difficult to save everyone in an instant, with my help I can at least guarantee that nothing will happen to the two of them. Yu Qianchou knew that he had misunderstood, but he was too lazy to explain now. Unexpectedly, Immortal Lord Crocodile raised his chin and said, the woman sitting on the bench is indeed beautiful. He should also be a hostage. Otherwise, why would her dantian be sealed? Aren't you going to save her? Yu Qianchou's gaze landed on Lu Yanqing. Her dantian was sealed? Immortal Crocodile grunted. The former snorted. She asked for it. Time passed slowly. The two hid in the cave and waited for a long time. Immortal Lord Crocodile did not know what Yu Qianchou was waiting for. After the sun rose and set, Immortal Lord Crocodile could not help but ask Yu Qianchou, who was resting with his eyes closed, are you still not going to act? Yu Qianchou opened his eyes and said slowly, it is not appropriate for me to appear first. If I appear first, he will definitely take my woman as the main hostage, which will increase the risk. Damn it. When Lanfeng's woman is a human, so are my women not? I will hold off for now and they will suffer less. Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned. Someone else is coming? Yu Qianchou nodded and said, waiting for help. Should be almost time. Since the demonic book is so magical, it is better to be prepared. Saving people is a small matter, but killing that guy is the important thing. Once we do, we must eliminate him completely. We cannot let him escape again and leave behind future trouble. I don't have time to put out fires everywhere. He then turned to Immortal Lord Crocodile and said solemnly, old monster, you should know better than me how dangerous the demonic book is. This person cannot be left alive. If I fail, please do your best to stop him. No matter what, we cannot let him escape. Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded slightly and said, those who cultivate the demonic book cannot be left alive. In that case, let me do it myself. I promise I will kill him in one move. No. Yu Qianchou's gaze turned sharp as he shook his head. He gnashed his teeth and said, there are some things I can choose not to do, but there are some things I have no choice but to do. He grabbed my woman. I'm a man. If I can't even deal with someone who touched my woman, what face do I have to come out? If I don't kill him with my own hands, how can I swallow this anger? Bastard. Immortal Crocodile's hair stood on end when he heard the viciousness in his words. It seemed that this kid had been provoked, but even so he was still holding back until now. It was obvious that he was angry and about to explode. There's going to be a good show. Immortal Lord Crocodile muttered to himself. Just then the sound of flying came from above. In the blink of an eye, two figures landed in the Spirit Fragrance Valley. It was Nongzhu and Wenlanfeng. Yu Qianchou immediately stood up, patted Immortal Crocodile's shoulder and said, the people we are waiting for are here. It's time to make a move. Help me keep an eye on them, don't let that bastard escape. At Exin Laojiu's warning, All the people in the abode stood up. Yan Zhuixing, who was sitting cross-legged, flashed to Lu Yanqing's side. He saw Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng appearing at the same time, but did not see Yu Qianqiu. He stared at Lu Yanqing with a sneer and said, "Senior Lu, I didn't want to be rude to you, but I'm afraid I have to apologize to you now." He reached out and grabbed Lu Yanqing's hair. His wrist was in a circle and his hair wrapped around his fist and stuck to the back of her head. Yan Zhuixing pushed Lu Yanqing out just like that. Nongzhu's eyes burned with anger when she saw that the world's most beautiful woman had her dantian sealed and was being abused. When Lanfeng's heart was about to break, he roared, "Yan Zhuixing, how dare you!" His roar echoed in the Spirit Fragrance Valley. The grief and indignation in his tone were indescribable. Yan Zhuixing, followed by Exen Laojiu and others, slowly pushed Lu Yanqing, who had lost her wits. He ignored Wen Lanfeng and stared at Nongzhu with a faint smile. "I didn't expect Mr. Nongzhu to come here. Does Senior Wen think that Mr. Nongzhu can save Senior Lu from me?" Nongzhu did not say a word. She narrowed her eyes and stared at the fist wrapped in Lu Yanqing's hair. He thought it was terrible. Yan Zhuixing's move was too cruel. It was as if he had become one with Lu Yanqing. In addition, Lu Yanqing's dantian was sealed. No matter how high their cultivation was, it would be difficult to save Lu Yanqing. When Lanfeng roared again, "Let her go." If Lu Yanqing was not in his hands, he would have rushed to tear Yan Zhuixing into pieces. Nongzhu glanced at him. Yan Zhuixing suddenly shouted, "Of course, no problem. But what about Yu Qianqiu? Didn't you promise to find Yu Qianqiu? As long as I see Yu Qianqiu, I will keep my promise and let her go." When Lanfeng was completely speechless, he turned to Nongzhu and asked, "Didn't you say that Yu Qianqiu would come? Why haven't I seen him until now?" Nongzhu also wondered why Yu Qianqiu did not come, but she stared at Yan Zhuixing calmly and said, "Yan Zhuixing, you are brave. You dare to take the risk alone." "Mr. Nongzhu, you flatter me." Yan Zhuixing looked back and said with a faint smile, "I have so many people with me. How can it be regarded as taking the risk alone? But Mr. Nongzhu really shouldn't come here." Nongzhu snorted, "What do you mean? Shouldn't I help my friend when he is in trouble?" That's true. But because you are here to help. Your calmness makes me feel a little unsafe," Yan Zhuixing said as he pulled back the hair in his hand. Lu Yanqing's face, which had lost its luster, was immediately exposed to the two of them. Nongzhu narrowed her eyes. When Lanfeng roared bitterly, "Yan Zhuixing, let her go." Yan Zhuixing stared at Lu Yanqing's beautiful face indifferently and said, "Senior Wen, I want to see Yu Qianqiu, but you brought Mr. Nongzhu here. This is definitely not what I want to see. You have to pay the price for making a mistake. I'll give you two choices. You kill Mr. Nongzhu and I won't kill Senior Lu. Or you don't kill Mr. Nongzhu and I will kill Senior Lu. You can only choose one of the two choices. My patience is limited. If you don't make a choice within 10, you can only see Senior Lu's beautiful face under my devil fist in your next life." "Bastard." When Lanfeng roared sadly and was extremely emotional. Nongzhu waved her hand to stop Wen Lanfeng and sneered at Yan Zhuixing, "I don't think you dare to kill Lu Yanqing. You will definitely die if you kill her." "Let's wait and see." Yan Zhuixing smiled faintly, stared at Wen Lanfeng and slowly counted, 1, 3, 4, yo. "Yan Zhuixing, you stray dog, when did you learn to count with your fingers like a child? Are you bored or are you out of your mind?" A mocking voice interrupted Yan Zhuixing's counting. Everyone looked back and saw a figure flashed and landed beside Nongzhu. Who else could it be but Yu Qianqiu? Yu Qianqiu first glanced at Enchantress of Allure and Yen Yu. The two women looked at him as if they didn't know him, which suddenly made a sinister smile appear on his face. When Nongzhu saw Yu Qianqiu, she subconsciously looked around to know who Yu Qianqiu's helper was, but she didn't find anyone. When Lanfeng showed a grateful face and turned to Yan Zhuixing and shouted, "Yan Zhuixing, Yu Qianqiu is here. Let them go." When Yan Zhuixing saw the bronze-skinned Yu Qianqiu with a head full of pigtails, he was speechless. He was stunned by his strange attire. He was stunned and ignored Wen Lanfeng. He smiled at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Finally Brother Yu is here. I thought Brother Yu would hide in his shell forever. But Brother Yu's pigtails are really interesting. Don't talk nonsense here." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand impatiently and interrupted, "I'm here. I don't have time to talk with you. Let them go. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit." Yan Zhuixing immediately snorted and said, "You Qianchou, you are not that stupid. Now your woman is in my hands. Why are you pretending to be fierce?" Yan Zhuixing grabbed the hair in his hand and with a muffled hum from Lu Yanqing he shouted, "Wen Lanfeng, if you don't want Lu Yanqing to die, kill Yu Qianchou." Before the anxious Wen Lanfeng could reply, Yu Qianchou had already shouted, "Kill your mother." He rushed over directly with a Xian broadsword in his hand. Lu Yanqing was the first to bear the brunt. Even Yan Zhuixing and Lu Yanqing were slashed together. Nongzhu was shocked. She didn't expect that this guy would directly attack without saying a word. He didn't even care about Lu Yanqing's life. When Lanfeng exclaimed, "Be merciful." Not to mention them, Yan Zhuixing was also shocked. He didn't expect that Yu Qianchou would risk becoming enemies with Wen Lanfeng to kill Lu Yanqing. He quickly dragged Lu Yanqing back. How could he really kill Lu Yanqing now? If Lu Yanqing was dead now, what else could he use to threaten Wen Lanfeng and Nongzhu? He immediately said sternly, "Stop him." Old Ninth Xian's group of 4 quickly blocked Yu Qianchou's path. Just at this time, on a small hillside not too far away, an explosion resounded. Soil and rocks flew everywhere, and before everyone could turn their heads to look, they only saw a blur in front of their eyes and a figure flashed past. 2 of the 4 people who stopped Yu Qianchou were suddenly missing. Enchantress and Yenyu had disappeared, leaving only Xen Laojiu and Xen Laojiu. What a fast speed! Who was this person? Whether it was Nongzhu or Yan Zhuixing who dragged Lu Yanqing back, they were all shocked. Absorbing Star's great technique. When the 2 sides crossed each other, they suddenly heard Yu Qianchou's shout. 2 clouds of white smoke appeared in the air. Yu Qianchou did not hesitate to sweep his broadsword at the 2 clouds of white smoke. In the blink of an eye, the white smoke followed Yu Qianchou, who was holding a broadsword to chase Yan Zhuixing, while 2 dry wreckage fell from the air and smashed to the ground. Chapter 774. The 9th and 8th Xian brothers died just like that? Nongzhu looked at the scattered wreckage on the ground in disbelief. He thought that Yu Qianchou had another way, so he acted directly. He didn't expect that Yu Qianchou would kill 9th Xian and 8th Xian without hesitation. Was this guy crazy? When Lanfeng also looked at the scattered wreckage on the ground with his mouth wide open. Lu Yanqing, who was held hostage by Yan Zhuixing, was stunned, completely stunned. Yan Zhuixing, who was retreating, was no less shocked than the other 3. He could not have imagined Yu Qianchou's actions. This guy was simply a madman. His well-thought-out plan was useless in front of him, and all threats were fake. Yan Zhuixing was currently gnashing his teeth in hatred. He had originally used Lu Yanqing to threaten the other party, but now it had become Yu Qianchou killing Lu Yanqing. He was protecting Lu Yanqing. What was this? Give me your life. With Yu Qianchou's roar, he had already caught up with Lu Yanqing. His Xian blade was like a phantom and he raised it without hesitation. Yan Zhuixing, who had just flashed to the door of the abode, suddenly opened his fist that was wrapped around his hair. In an instant, the broken hair fluttered in the wind. Lu Yanqing's hair became short, and she was directly pushed out by Yan Zhuixing facing Yu Qianchou's blade. Now the situation was reversed in an instant and his plan was very simple. Since it was fake to threaten Yu Qianchou, it was better to let Yu Qianchou kill Lu Yanqing. With Wen Lanfeng's feelings for Lu Yanqing, once Yu Qianchou killed Lu Yanqing, Wen Lanfeng would definitely fight with Yu Qianchou. Nongzhu would not be able to stand by and just solve his crisis at this time. Seeing that Lu Yanqing was about to be killed by Yu Qianchou, Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng exclaimed in shock, "Stop!" They teleported at the same time. Just as the blade was about to drink Lu Yanqing's blood, it suddenly changed direction to avoid. Yu Qianchou smoothly hugged Lu Yanqing, who was flying over, turned around and quickly swept back, passing between the stunned Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng. Yu Qianchou held a blade in one hand and held Lu Yanqing in the other. He stood there quietly, and the battle in the blink of an eye did not leave any expression on his face. Lu Yanqing, on the other hand, suddenly came to her senses. She punched Yu Qianchou and cried, "You killed them, you killed them." Yu Qianchou was indifferent and let her beat him. He just stared coldly at Wen Lanfeng and said, "Senior Wen, I have saved her for you. If she is long-winded again, I don't mind killing her." Wen Lanfeng's astonishment turned into surprise. He quickly flashed back and took Lu Yanqing from Yu Qianchou's hand. "Yanqing, are you all right?" Lu Yanqing struggled to fight with Yu Qianchou. She shook Wen Lanfeng and said, "He killed old Jiu and the others." He killed old Zhou and the others. Help me kill him. Help me kill him. For this request in the current situation, Wen Lanfeng could not wait to thank Yu Qianqiu. How could he kill Yu Qianqiu? He gritted his teeth and gently pressed his palm on Lu Yanqing's back. Lu Yanqing immediately passed out. Wen Lanfeng breathed a sigh of relief and said to Yu Qianqiu gratefully, "Thank you." "Don't thank me. As long as she doesn't hate me, I will be thankful." Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "This is something that you could have done, Senior Wen. As a result, I have to be the bad guy. In the end, things are back to square one. But I still want to thank Senior Wen for delaying the time so that I can save the people I should save." Then he looked back at Immortal Crocodile standing on the hillside with his hands behind his back. Charm and Yen Yu were unconscious at his feet. When Lanfeng, Nongzhu and Yan Zhuixing all turned to look at him, they were all surprised and doubtful. This person had just rescued Temptress and Yen Yu, but none of them had seen his movements clearly. His cultivation was so high that it was beyond their imagination. There was no such person in the cultivation world. What made them wonder was that this person's hairstyle was exactly the same as Yu Qianqiu's. They did not know where Yu Qianqiu had invited this monster. Yan Zhuixing slowly turned his head and gritted his teeth. "Yu Qianqiu, you are ruthless. I'm not as ruthless as you. Are you so sure that I will let Lu Yanqing go?" If he did not realize it now, then he would not be Yan Zhuixing. Yu Qianqiu's action of killing 9th and 8th Exin had indeed caused him to make an absolute misjudgment, making him mistakenly think that Yu Qianqiu did not care about the life and death of the people of Lingfang Valley. But who would have thought that Yu Qianqiu would be so ruthless at all costs, to create such an illusion, and the ultimate goal was to save Lu Yanqing. Yu Qianqiu sneered and did not answer. In fact, he did not want to save Lu Yanqing and the others at all. He was even holding back his anger. If he really wanted to save them with Immortal Crocodile's cultivation, it should not be a problem to save the others. But even he did not expect that Yan Zhuixing would give up Lu Yanqing at that moment. He would not do such a favor unless there was something wrong with his brain. Since he had already done the good deed, there was no need to tell Yan Zhuixing the truth. As a bad person, he naturally would not answer. "Cut the crap." Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly, holding the saber in his hand, and said indifferently, "There is no point in saying more. Today is the day you die." Yan Zhuixing looked back at Nongzhu, who had cut off his escape route, and then looked at Wen Lanfeng, who was holding Lu Yanqing. His eyes finally fell on Immortal Crocodile on the hillside. His pupils suddenly shrank. "Yu Qianqiu, if you have the ability, don't rely on others. You and I will fight to the death, do you dare?" "What a joke. When have you ever seen me need help to deal with you? It seems that every time you drag someone to be your helper." Yu Qianqiu pointed his saber at him and said contemptuously, "If you are still a man, don't run away again." Yan Zhuixing clenched his fists and his whole body was boiling with killing intent. He was completely irritated. But at this moment someone suddenly shouted, "How arrogant you are!" A figure landed beside Yan Zhuixing. He was wearing a white robe, staring at Yu Qianqiu sternly. After seeing the person, Yan Zhuixing was slightly stunned. He immediately bowed and saluted, "Pastor." The person was none other than Bing Qingzi. Bing Qingzi's eyes paused on Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing. He seemed a little surprised and glanced at Yan Zhuixing meaningfully. At the moment when Bing Qingzi just stood still, a figure came quickly from afar. He paused in the air for a moment and immediately flashed to Wen Lanfeng's side. He asked in a low voice, "Miss, what's wrong?" This person had only one arm and his eyes were shining brightly on his old face. Nongzhu and Bing Qingzi exclaimed at the same time, "Li Duxing." However, before the first wave subsided, another wave arose. Many people rushed over from all directions and landed in Lingfang Valley one after another. Pei Fong and others were among them. There were at least 50 or 60 people, all of whom were lords of spirit transformation stage from various countries. There were still more coming. When they saw the one-armed old man, they all exclaimed, "Li Duxing." Chapter 775. He had been hiding in the ghost village for many years and had never shown his face in the turbulent cultivation circle. He had almost been forgotten by people. But Li Duxing's fame in those days was unquestionable. Like his name, he didn't care about other people's feelings. He fought alone in the cultivation circle where the strong preyed on the weak. He was invincible, and no one had ever been able to resist more than 10 moves from him. What he left was an invincible legend. Although he couldn't be one of the top 10 superiors with his cultivation at that time, No one would doubt that he had the strength to be one of the top 10 superiors. Because people would compare the opponents he defeated with their own cultivation. Maybe everyone could defeat their opponents like him, but they all knew whether they could win within 10 moves. Everyone knew that once such a superior broke through to the last stage of Huashan realm, some of the top 10 superiors would have to give way to him. However, after he really broke through to the last stage of Huashan realm, he brazenly challenged Bai Chongqun, the torture master of the demon ghost region and the first superior in the world. As a result, he was beaten into a cripple by Bai Chongqun and his cultivation plummeted. If it weren't for Lu Yanqing, the master of Lingfang Valley, who brought him back to life, he might have been killed. But for the lords of various countries, Li Duxing's defeat was glorious. After all, Bai Chongqun was an invincible legend in the cultivation circle. He was the first person who had the courage to challenge Bai Chongqun. It was this legendary figure who had once caused the lords of various countries to be secretly fearful. This legendary figure who had almost been forgotten by everyone suddenly appeared in front of everyone today. How could everyone not cry out in surprise? The most shocking thing was that most of the lords of various countries couldn't see through his cultivation. But Pei Fong and others who had reached the last stage of Huashan realm could see that Li Duxing's cultivation had been restored to the last stage of Huashan realm. The legendary Li Duxing is back. The lords of various countries suddenly thought of this, and they even felt that it was not the right time to come. Something happened in Lingfang Valley which had been spread by the civilians who had fled from Lingfang Valley. For the common people, it might just be because they saw someone kill someone in the Spirit Fang Valley, so they were shouting everywhere. However, for the cultivation world who had heard of this matter, it was no small matter. Why was there someone making trouble in the Spirit Fang Valley again? Everyone more or less owed Spirit Fang Valley a favor on the surface. Previously, when Yan Zhuixing caused trouble, it was because Bai Chongqun was going to the Eastern Holy Land, so everyone had a reason not to make too big of a commotion. Now that Spirit Fang Valley was in trouble, even if it was because of the favor they owed, everyone had to come and see if there was anything they could do to help. However, whether they would sincerely help was another matter. That was also the reason why people rushed here at this time. But they didn't expect to see Li Duxing reappear. Everyone knew that Li Duxing had a close relationship with Lingfang Valley. Although they didn't know what happened to Lingfang Valley, they had a vague feeling that it wouldn't end well today. At the same time, he sighed endlessly. Lu Yanqing was Lu Yanqing. There were really a lot of flower protectors and they were all experts. Since Pei Fong saw Li Duxing, the smile on his face froze and his expression became gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long time, he squeezed out a smile again, walked over with a smile and cupped one hand in the other before his chest. He said, "Brother Li, you have been away from the cultivation circle for many years. I didn't expect you to be more elegant than before. Congratulations." Li Duxing glanced at him and said indifferently, "Go away." Then he looked around and said in a low voice, "Who the hell is it? How dare you behave atrociously in Spirit Fang Valley? Get out." He showed an imposing manner that looked down on all heroes. Last time when Lingfang Valley was in trouble, he wanted to help. However, when Lu Yanqing healed his injury, she was afraid that he would go to Bai Chongqun for revenge. She warned him that if Bai Chongqun was still in the cultivation circle, he would not be allowed to show up there. As a result, he was restricted to the ghost village. Now he heard that Lingfang Valley was in trouble again, and Bai Chongqun had gone to the Eastern Holy Land. The restriction of that year had been lifted, so he immediately came here. That was why the current scene happened. The smile on Pei Fong's face froze again when he was treated so disrespectfully in public. However, he was very flexible and didn't get angry at all. He just chuckled and rolled to the side without saying a word. The heroes were silent. Bing Qingzi frowned and looked at Yan Zhuixing beside him. Although he didn't see what happened, he had already guessed that it was Yan Zhuixing who did it. Actually, when he heard that someone was making trouble in Spirit Fang Valley, he immediately guessed that it was Yan Zhuixing. He was afraid that Yan Zhuixing would have an accident, so he came here immediately. As expected, Yan Zhuixing was really here. "Did you do it?" Bing Qingzi asked in a secret voice. Yan Zhuixing didn't deny it. Instead, he asked in a secret voice, "Who is that one-armed old man? Why haven't I heard of him? It seems that everyone is afraid of him." Bing Qingzi sighed slightly and told him about Li Duxing's background. Yan Zhuixing looked around with his eyes flickering. He knew that he was in trouble today. The change of the situation was completely out of his expectation. Although Lu Yanqing herself did not have much ability, but based on her medical skills, the background she established was not ordinary. Seeing that no one answered, Li Duxing stared at Wen Lanfeng, who was holding Lu Yanqing, and shouted, "Wen Lanfeng, what's going on? Who did this to Miss Lu?" Lu Yanqing's beautiful hair had turned into ragged short hair. She hadn't woken up yet, while Wen Lanfeng was haggard and looked very scary. Their abnormal behavior had already made everyone surprised and doubtful. It was hard to believe that someone could hurt Wen Lanfeng. But because Li Duxing was here, no one asked. Yu Qianqiu was also eye-catching, especially his ingenious braids. No one knew what was wrong with him. And he was looking at Li Duxing with a frightening Daqing saber and pestle. Why was this old guy here? Wen Lanfeng held his breath. He didn't want to show weakness in front of the lords, but Li Duxing kept asking, so he had to answer. He supported Lu Yanqing with one hand and slapped his chest with the other. With a pu sound, he spat out a black frozen blood clot. It sizzled and dried up on the ground, causing everyone to be secretly shocked. Was Wen Lanfeng seriously injured? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. For a moment, many of them had different expressions on their faces, and many of them had ulterior motives. Pei Feng's eyes were especially sharp. But when he saw Li Duxing, a trace of pity flashed in his eyes. When Lanfeng glanced at Lu Yanqing in his arms and pointed at Yan Zhuixing with a murderous look, everything was caused by this man. We can't let him run away. Everyone's eyes were on Yan Zhuixing. Li Duxing suddenly stared at Yan Zhuixing without saying anything. He turned into a shadow and directly shot at Yan Zhuixing without saying anything. Yan Zhuixing was slightly shocked, but Bing Qingzi beside him had already teleported to the air. The two shadows intertwined with each other. Bang-bang sounds were heard continuously, and the airwaves were rolling like tides. The two silhouettes that were entangled together were extremely fast. It was almost impossible to see the process of the fight clearly. With a loud bang, the airwaves collapsed. The two shadows quickly separated and appeared in the air at the same time. No one could tell who was the winner. But everyone present had a different view. Li Duxing only used one arm to fight with Bing Qingzi's arms. Obviously he was more skillful. Bing Qingzi, it seems that you want to intervene in this matter. Li Duxing snorted and then shouted, "Again." "Wait." Bing Qingzi waved his hand to stop him. "Brother Li, wait. It's not too late to take action after figuring out the matter." Then he flashed back to Yan Zhuixing. Yan Zhuixing immediately cupped his hands to Li Duxing and said, "Senior Li, please understand. Outsiders can't tell the truth. Senior Li, why don't you let Senior Lu wake up? The truth will be revealed immediately and I won't be wronged." Yu Qianqiu, who was carrying a saber, was slightly stunned. Li Duxing had already flashed to Lu Yanqing's side and patted her shoulder. Lu Yanqing immediately woke up. However, when she opened her eyes and saw Yu Qianqiu beside her, she immediately seemed to go crazy. When Lanfeng was shocked and held her tightly. However, Lu Yanqing struggled to rush out and fight Yu Qianqiu desperately. She shouted heartbreakingly, "I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you." Li Duxing suddenly stared at Yu Qianqiu with a ferocious look and said harshly, "It's you." Yu Qianqiu immediately realized that he had fallen into Yan Zhuixing's trap. He immediately shouted at Lu Yanqing, "Bitch, are you crazy? I saved you but you want to kill me." When he was about to explain to Yan Zhuixing, he saw that the master and disciple had flashed away when he attracted everyone's attention. Fortunately, Nongzhu was not weak either. She was very vigilant and had already teleported in the air to stop the two. Bang! Bang! Figures intertwined in the air. Nongzhu and Bing Qingzi were fighting together. Yu Qianqiu flashed up with his saber and was about to help. However, Li Duxing teleported in front of him and reached out his claw to grab him. He shouted, "Want to run away?" When Lanfeng was shocked. He exerted force to make Lu Yanqing faint again. Then he teleported between Yu Qianqiu and Li Duxing, grabbed Li Duxing's wrist and shouted, "Brother Li, you've fallen into my trap." Bing Qingzi, who was fighting with Nongzhu, was shocked. He found that Nongzhu's cultivation had reached the last stage of Huashan realm. It was impossible for him to get away in a short time. He immediately shouted to Yan Zhuixing, who had flashed back to help, "When are you going to leave if not now? Hurry up." Yan Zhuixing paused for a moment and understood that the situation was critical. If he didn't leave now, he wouldn't be able to. He said, "Master, take care." He immediately performed Magic Ray Passing Shadow, and flew away. However, Yu Qianzhou had already told Immortal Crocodile to keep an eye on him, so it would be difficult for him to escape. Everyone was confused by the messy changes. However, from when Lan Feng saying that Li Duxing had fallen into a trap to Bing Qingzi telling Yan Zhuixing to run away, they vaguely understood what was going on. Just as his attention was on Yan Zhuixing, he was shocked by Yan Zhuixing's quick escape. However, at this moment, an illusory hand suddenly appeared out of nowhere in the distance and grabbed the escaping Yan Zhuixing. With a hoo sound, it threw Yan Zhuixing back. The figure flashed and directly hit the center of Lingfang Valley. Bang! A big pit appeared on the ground and dust rose. Chapter 776. The sudden change was too much for everyone to take in. They looked around in astonishment and no one noticed who threw Yan Zhuixing back. The giant palm that appeared out of nowhere disappeared as miraculously as it appeared. Everyone looked at each other inquiringly, but they all shook their heads slightly, indicating that they didn't see who did it. An inexplicable sense of fear spread in everyone's heart. They didn't expect that there was such a master hidden in Lingfang Valley. At this time, some people looked at Immortal Crocodile on the hillside not far away. His face was strange and no one could see through his cultivation. No one knew him, but his braids were exactly the same as Yu Qianzhou's. Many people suspected that it was him who did it, but he seemed to be standing there all the time and no one saw him move. Bing Qingzi, who was fighting with Nongzhu, was shocked. He tried his best to escape into the pit and fished Yan Zhuixing out. He asked anxiously, "Are you all right?" Yan Zhuixing was covered in dust and blood was oozing out of his 7 apertures. He was in a mess, obviously badly shaken, but he still shook his head to show that he was fine. Fortunately, he had forged a devil body, or he would have been seriously injured even if he didn't die. Nongzhu quickly flashed over and landed beside Yu Qianzhou. She glared at Li Duxing and said, "Old devil, are you crazy? You attacked without asking the right and wrong." Yu Qianzhou snorted coldly and couldn't be bothered to pay attention to them. He looked at Yan Zhuixing and said, "Yan Zhuixing, aren't you being too naive if you want to rely on tricks like changing targets to flee? If you have the ability, why don't you try running again?" Yan Zhuixing spat out a mouthful of saliva mixed with blood and dust. He looked at Immortal Crocodile on the hillside and sneered, "Yu Qianzhou, if I can't escape, you won't have a good time either. I know all the shady things you've done behind my back. As long as I tell you, I'm afraid that many people here will want to kill you. So I advise you to help me leave safely or no one will have a good time." Others might not know what had just happened, but he had seen it with his own eyes. The person who had thrown him back was the strange man standing on the hill. Both of the strange man's attacks were unfathomable, and his cultivation was frighteningly high. He did not even have the ability to fight back. It was not something that he could block with his current cultivation. Everyone's eyes immediately focused on Yu Qianzhou. They did not know what Yu Qianzhou had done behind the scenes. Yu Qianzhou sneered. He looked around and said, "I might be afraid of anything, but I'm not afraid of threats. So what if you know what I did? I'll give you a chance to speak. I want to see who here has the ability to kill me. There are some things that need to be settled. I don't have time to waste with you." As soon as he said that, many people became unhappy. Cold snorts came from the surroundings. It was obvious that they thought he was too arrogant. Yan Zhuixing immediately chuckled and said, "It seems that you would rather go all out and become the enemy of the world than cooperate with me. Do you really think that you can stop me just because you found a powerful helper? Since I dared to come out, I'm not afraid of this day." "Oh," Yu Qianzhou said. He raised his eyebrows and glanced at the master and disciple. He said jokingly, "Yan Zhuixing, it seems that you are very confident in the blood escape skill from the demonic book. However, the feeling of lowering one level of cultivation every time you use it is not a good feeling, right?" Bing Qingzi and Yan Zhuixing were shocked. They looked at each other and couldn't hide the shock in their eyes. They did not know how Yu Qianzhou knew that he was cultivating the demonic book and knew the weakness of the blood escape skill. Everyone was unfamiliar with the term demonic book. However, from the reaction of the master and disciple, they could tell that Yu Qianzhou was not lying. It seemed that the demonic book was the source of Yan Zhuixing's skyrocketing cultivation. Everyone's eyes lit up immediately. It turned out that the peerless martial art that everyone was fighting for was called the demonic book. Just by hearing the name, they knew it was extraordinary. However, what shocked everyone was yet to come. Perhaps it was for revenge. Yan Zhuixing immediately shouted angrily, "Yu Qianzhou, don't you dare frame me here. You have always liked to swindle people. If you are capable, tell everyone what is the relationship between you and the hero, who is killing and looting everywhere. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. He did not know why Yan Zhuixing knew this secret. It seemed that no one else knew this secret. Then he remembered that the temptress had been controlled by him, and the temptress was the one who vaguely knew about this matter. Therefore it was not surprising that Yan Zhuixing knew it. However, he did not know that everything had loopholes. This matter had nothing to do with the temptress. Yan Zhuixing had already guessed that he was related to the hero. Among the lords of various countries, whether they had been cheated by the hero or not, they all stared at Yu Qianzhou with sharp eyes. Even Nongzhu looked at him in disbelief. Yu Qianzhou looked around at the crowd and snorted coldly. I have always been a person who dares to take responsibility for my actions. Since I have done it, I have done it. There is nothing to hide. That's right. The hero is one of my people. When he said this, Nongzhu looked at him speechlessly. She did not know how many secrets this fellow was hiding. The surroundings were in an uproar. Yu Qianzhou was immediately condemned by everyone, and there was a lot of cursing and scolding. Yu Qianzhou raised his eyebrows and stabbed his saber into the ground. Then he pointed at the people who were cursing him and said in a clear voice, "If you're not convinced, don't try to talk. If you have the ability, come and fight me. Whether it is a one-on-one fight or a group fight, I will fight with you all." His words were full of confidence, but the lords of various countries were really not afraid of him. In an instant of silence, many people were ready to make a move, but they were also worried about Niu Yud of the Monster Ghost territory. This made the group of people very conflicted. They wanted to fight but dared not. The muscles on Nongzhu's face twitched, and she secretly scolded this guy for being crazy. She glanced at Immortal Crocodile on the hillside and thought, is this what he is relying on? Even Li Duxing looked at Yu Qianzhou as if he was looking at a monster. He had seen arrogant people, but he had never seen such an arrogant one. Yan Zhuixing glanced at the agitated crowd and did not forget to add fuel to the fire. Seniors, you may not know this. In fact, the current torture envoy of the Monster Ghost territory, Niu Yud, is actually Yu Qianzhou. In fact, there is no such person. Yu Qianzhou is the current torture envoy of the Monster Ghost territory. Everyone has been fooled by his little tricks. Once this secret was exposed, it caused a great shock, far more than the influence of a hero. Almost all the people present had been humiliated by Niu Yud in the Monster Ghost territory, especially Pei Fong. Pei Fong, who was watching the fun, immediately changed his expression and shouted angrily, Yu Qianzhou, is what Yan Zhuixing said true? With a cold snort, Yu Qianzhou suddenly disappeared and appeared in front of Pei Fong. He asked indifferently with no expression, Fatty Pei, it is true. Asking you for 300 million upper-level spiritual stones is an honor for you. Are you not convinced? Teleportation. The crowd was slightly shocked. Wasn't his cultivation at the early stage of crossing calamity? How could he teleport when his cultivation was at least at the early stage of crossing calamity? In addition, Yu Qianzhou's brazen provocation of Pei Fong gave the crowd an unfathomable feeling. After all, Pei Fong had two allies at the early stage of Huashan realm, Qi Jujuan and Ouyangda. Under normal circumstances, the two of them would definitely help Pei Fong once they started a fight. Only then did the crowd realize that they had always been used to the saying that Yu Qianzhou was gifted and couldn't see through his cultivation. As for how deep his cultivation was, it had always been hearsay. In fact, no one had ever seen through his cultivation. Most importantly, if he was really Niu Yud and his cultivation was really at the early stage of crossing calamity, how could Bai Chongqun be assured to pass on the position of the Monster Ghost territory to him? Could it be that Yu Qianzhou had been hiding his cultivation on purpose all along? It should be known that other things could be faked, but teleportation could only be used when one's cultivation had reached a certain level. Otherwise, it couldn't be faked at all. Obviously, Yu Qianzhou's cultivation was definitely not at the early stage of crossing calamity. At a low estimate, he was at least at the early stage of crossing calamity. But how could someone at the early stage of crossing calamity dare to provoke Pei Fong at the early stage of Huashan realm? Yan Zhuixing's pupils suddenly shrank. He and Bing Qingzi looked at each other in shock. Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng were also shocked by Yu Qianzhou's sudden teleportation. Even Immortal Crocodile's eyes flickered on the hillside. Fatty Pei, I'm asking you a question. How dare you not answer? Yu Qianzhou asked coldly. Pei Fong's usually smiling fat face was expressionless at this moment. There was a faint anger in his eyes. He wanted to explode, but he wasn't sure if Yu Qianzhou had the real ability. He rarely did things that he wasn't sure of, but this time he really wanted to take a gamble. He slowly glanced at his allies and gritted his teeth. The Monster Ghost Territory's torture master is asking me a question. Since the two of you are my allies, please give me some ideas. The meaning of his words was obvious. They were allies and it was time to advance and retreat together. Let's make a decision together. Qi Jujuan and O Yongda looked at each other hesitantly. They weren't sure how to handle this matter. However, Yu Qianzhou seemed to be insatiable. He glanced at the three indifferently and said, "Since we're allies, we should be punished together." The three were shocked. Yu Qianzhou's words made it clear that he was going to make a move. The three reacted quickly and quickly retreated, keeping a safe distance of more than 10 meters from Yu Qianzhou. The blue-faced demon saber, deadly claws and Junlin's ruler were quickly retrieved from their storage bags. The three pairs of eyes stared at Yu Qianzhou, maintaining a high degree of vigilance. Although they were all ranked among the top 10 experts in the cultivation world, they were still extremely nervous at this moment. After all, they were about to fight the Monster Ghost Territory's torture master. The prestige of the Monster Ghost Territory's torture masters was too great, especially the previous torture master by Changchun, who had left an indelible and terrible shadow in their hearts. It would be a lie to say that they weren't afraid. The atmosphere in Spirit Fragrance Valley instantly became extremely tense. Everyone's eyes were on the four people who were confronting each other. The lords who were close to them quickly retreated, afraid that they would be caught in the crossfire. Chapter 777. Nongzhu was the one who was most nervous. He didn't know what Yu Qianzhou was trying to do. How dare he provoke Fatty Pei and the other two? Pei Feng's words didn't seem to push him to the point of making a move. However, when Yu Qianzhou showed his teleportation just now, Nongzhu realized that he couldn't figure out how strong he was. However, he knew that this guy wasn't one to suffer losses. There must be a reason for him to do this. Although he said that, Nongzhu was still on high alert. He was ready to save them if he found anything wrong. The entire Lingfang Valley was extremely quiet. Only a gentle breeze was blowing. Everyone's attention was focused on the few people who were confronting each other. All of them looked expectant. To the lords of the various nations, it didn't matter who won or lost. It would be even better if a few of them died. It would be best if all of them died. Be it the Demon Ghost Realm's Torture Master or the three late-stage deity transformation cultivators, all of these people who had been suppressing them all died. Of course, to Yan Zhuixing, if one of the four had to die, he would definitely choose Yu Qianzhou. As the atmosphere froze, everyone's eyes moved. Yu Qianzhou slowly raised his hand to meet the three's palm. He snorted coldly and said, "How dare you fight with me, the torture envoy? You've got guts." The three of them immediately felt an aura lock on them. They looked at each other and a trace of ruthlessness flashed across their faces. Since they had been forced to this point, there was no way out. Pei Feng's fat face trembled ferociously. "Since the torture envoy is giving us face, then we won't accept guests." He stopped abruptly before he finished speaking. His gaze moved down and slowly looked at his hand. He was scared out of his wits when he saw it. His expression changed drastically. He finally found the reason why his hand suddenly became empty. The blue beauty demon blade that he relied on to become famous was nowhere to be seen. A layer of fine dust shining with blue light floated down and covered his feet. Qi Jujuan also felt that his hand was empty. He glanced at it and his whole body froze. The monarch descent ruler was gone. There was only a layer of golden dust dancing under the sun. Ouyang Da's eyes widened as he raised his hands in disbelief. The pitch-black deadly claws that covered his arms suddenly slid down like quicksand. He waved his arms in an attempt to stop them, but all he caught were two globs of black powder. The faces of the three of them instantly turned deathly pale, and they froze on the spot, motionless. Air rushed in and out of their throats and a sense of panic spread to their faces. The three of them only felt that they had been locked on by the other's aura, but none of them were able to sense how the other had made his move. The unknown power was the most terrifying. The power that could not be seen, could not be heard, and could not be comprehended was the most frightening, because it exceeded everyone's imagination. Under the sunlight, blue, gold, and black dust danced in the air, reflecting the enchanting and gorgeous colors. However, it was this gorgeous and enchanting color that sent chills down everyone's spines. It was as if they could smell the scent of death. Without a sound, the spirit treasures that the 3 soul formation final stage cultivators relied on to make a name for themselves were gone just like that, turning into drifting dust. How was this possible? How powerful must one be to be able to do this? Everyone even suspected that the spirit treasures of Pei Fong and the other 2 had been tampered with, but they all knew that this was impossible. The spirit treasures that the 3 of them relied on to make a name for themselves had always been with them, and they never left their bodies. It was impossible for anyone to have the opportunity to tamper with them. Fear, disbelief, confusion, and a series of other complicated emotions crawled onto everyone's faces. Everyone originally thought that Yu Qianchou's braided hair was a little comical, but now that they looked at the back of his unmoving figure, they felt a little suffocated. Although he was just standing there quietly, he made everyone feel like they were looking up to a tall mountain, giving off an unfathomable sense of oppression. At first, some people were still suspicious of why Bai Chongqun would pass the position of Demon Ghost Region Torture Envoy to Yu Qianchou, but now, all their doubts were easily resolved. No one had any doubts about Bai Chongqun's decision. Was there anyone more suitable than him to take over the position of Demon Ghost Region Torture Envoy? His mysterious strength was enough to explain everything. Immortal Crocodile's eyes flickered. When Lan Feng was shocked, Nongzhu was dumbfounded, and Li Duxing stared at Yu Qianchou with his sharp eyes. This person was the new torture envoy after Bai Chongqun. Yan Zhuixing clenched his fists so hard that his knuckles turned white, and his tightly bitten lips oozed a trace of blood. He silently told himself that this was absolutely impossible, and that there must be something fishy behind it. Otherwise he wouldn't have been beaten to the point of vomiting blood when they fought. A trace of desolation flashed across Bing Qingzi's face. He silently looked back at Yan Zhuixing and sighed helplessly in his heart. Pei Fong and the other 2 were still in a daze. They even thought that if Yu Qianchou's palm was not aimed at the spirit treasures in their hands, but at themselves, what would the consequences be? A very terrible consequence. Pei Fong smiled bitterly in his heart. He should have known that Bai Chongqun would not pass the position of Demon Ghost Region Torture Envoy to an incompetent person. He had been calculating his whole life. Why couldn't he hold back? He had hesitated just now too. But Yu Qianchou was pressing on. Obviously he didn't intend to let him go. In that case, the 3 exchanged a look as if they had a tacit understanding, and a hint of fierceness flashed in their eyes. They could survive in the cultivation world until now not only by being flexible and able to endure what others could not, but also by being ruthless and daring to fight. At this moment, everyone's pupils suddenly shrank and they saw the 3 disappear at the same time. But just when the 3 seemed to have moved, Yu Qianchou seemed to have known in advance, and directly sank into the ground with a swoosh. Like a stone sinking into the sea, he suddenly sank into the ground and there was not even a ripple. Everyone thought that they were seeing things, but they really saw the ground sink, and Yu Qianchou directly sank into the ground. But the strange thing was that after Yu Qianchou disappeared, the ground was still the same and no trace could be seen. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, 3 silhouettes suddenly appeared and converged at the position where Yu Qianchou had disappeared. Boom! An explosive sound was heard and the earth quaked. In an instant the earth and stones collapsed, and the air waves crazily destroyed the surroundings. Relying on their profound cultivation base, they were barely able to withstand the aftershock of the explosion. However, the surrounding spirit herbs and plants were immediately uprooted by the surging airwaves. The bamboo sheds and abodes in the Spirit Fragrance Valley were also destroyed in an instant. Dust and smoke rose in all directions, and a huge pit with a diameter of tens of meters appeared in the central area. The terrible thing was not its width but its bottomless depth. The sides of the pit were covered with cracks, and some of them were even hundreds of meters long, as if a big earthquake had occurred. The power of 3 late-stage soul formation experts working together was indeed extraordinary. No one knew whether Yu Qianchou, who had drilled into the ground, was dead or alive. Pei Fong and the other 2 stood back to back at the mouth of the pit, and their eyes vigilantly scanned the inside and around the pit. They even used their divine sense to search 3 feet into the ground, not daring to miss any movement underground. However, there was a limit to how deep their divine sense could penetrate the ground. They didn't find any movement in the shallow layer, but it was difficult to spy on the deeper layer. At this moment, a majestic and terrifying aura rose from the deep pit into the sky, and directly enveloped the 3 of them. The three of them couldn't help but shiver. Pei Fong gritted his teeth and shouted, "He's down there, let's fight." The three of them simultaneously flashed into the pit, and many people immediately flashed into the air, wanting to see the movement of the battle below. However, a terrifying thing happened. The entire ground suddenly surged like waves, and the tens of meters wide hole instantly merged together. The ground seemed to have never been damaged, and it returned to its original flat state. Everyone was shocked. They had never seen such a strange thing before. At this moment, the entire ground suddenly trembled, and it seemed restless. It was as if a volcano was about to erupt, and they could faintly hear rumbling sounds coming from below. Clearly, the three of them were already fighting underground. As everyone was shocked, the tremors underground became stronger, and the rumbling sounds became louder and louder. It was getting closer and closer to the surface, and it sounded very restless, as if something was trying to break free from the ground and break out. Everyone looked at each other. They couldn't imagine how intense the battle below was, and why the tremors were so frequent and violent. On the small hill, Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes were still flashing, but Nongzhu was extremely nervous. She secretly cursed these guys for fighting underground, and she didn't even know how to help them at the critical moment. Little did she know that Pei Fong and the other two immediately felt that they had been tricked as soon as they entered the ground. The entire ground seemed to have come to life, instantly sealing off their escape route and burying them more than 200 meters underground. It would have been fine if they were just buried, but the ground was still trembling violently as if it was going to crush them into powder. The three of them had never encountered such a strange thing. In their panic, they quickly gathered together, desperately releasing their vigor shields to resist the huge pressure coming from their surroundings. Outsiders could not imagine how much pressure there was under 200 meters, especially when the ground was moving violently. It was a huge force comparable to the movement of the Earth's crust. It was so strong that it almost crushed the three's vigor shields. Fortunately, their cultivation was high and they could barely resist it. The three of them attacked frantically in all directions, fearing that they would be ambushed by Xianxia, but they couldn't even see Xianxia's shadow. The more the three of them fought, the more terrified they became. They realized that no matter how strong their attacks were, it was like a clay ox entering the sea without any effect. The thick ground around them had just been blasted open, but it was pressing down again. They had never thought that the usually silent and stiff ground would be so terrifying when it moved. It made them feel as if they had nowhere to exert their strength, and the three of them felt like they were buried alive. Obviously, it was not a long-term solution to continue wasting time here, and they would definitely die. Pei Fong shouted in shock and fear, "We can't waste any more time. Let's go up and fight our way out first." The three of them immediately used their powerful cultivation to attack indiscriminately, breaking through all the way up. Chapter 778. Xianxia, who was hiding underground in the distance, did not dare to approach them. These three fellows were able to survive in the cultivation world until now, so they were not to be trifled with. Every move they made had the power to split mountains and split the earth. It was very terrifying, and it was not something he could block with his cultivation. He could only use the earth spell to control the earth to squeeze and trample on these three guys. He was going to torture them half to death first. After discovering that these three guys were desperately trying to escape, Xianxia was immediately displeased. How could he let them escape so easily? He hadn't finished creating the shock effect yet. In fact, with Xianxia's current cultivation, although he couldn't compare to those experts at the soul formation final stage, the distance that his chi could spread and the speed at which he could lock onto his target, together with the 5-element spell, were enough. He probably couldn't find any opponents in the cultivation world. This was also the reason why he dared to provoke Pei Fong and the others. If he really wanted to kill Pei Fong and the others immediately, he wouldn't have needed to act cool and use the gold absolute. He could have just used the absorbing star's great technique to deal with these three guys immediately. The key point was that he wanted to show his power in front of everyone today. He wanted to show them his awesome methods and let them know that he, the torture master of the demon ghost region, was not to be trifled with, and they had better behave themselves in the future. This was called deterrence. It would be best if he could shock them once, twice, and thrice so that they would tremble with fear and completely give up the idea of going against him. Otherwise, how would he have the energy to deal with them one by one in the future? Speaking of which, he now had the ability to kill Pei Fong and the others, but if Pei Fong and the others escaped, it would be difficult for him to catch up to them with the cultivation of Pei Fong and the others. He had finally trapped the three of them underground. How could he let them escape so easily? No matter what, he had to torture them until they were almost out of breath and then let them out so that everyone could see his performance. He definitely couldn't let them escape now. Pei Fong and the others who were bombarding and breaking out of the encirclement immediately felt that the surrounding earth was wriggling more and more violently, and the resulting pressure was also increasing. The three of them immediately felt a fatal threat, and in panic they used all their cultivation to break out of the encirclement. Yu Qianzhou immediately realized that it was difficult to trap them. He cursed in his heart. He couldn't play anymore, so he had to kill them. Pei Fong and the other two suddenly felt the pressure around them decrease greatly. Pei Fong immediately shouted, "Go!" The three of them were extremely vigilant. They first launched a series of attacks in all directions, abandoning the threat. Then they immediately seized the opportunity and launched 6 palms at the top of their heads. Bang! Bang! The earth trembled violently and a large hole suddenly exploded in the ground. Dirt and rocks flew everywhere and 3 figures quickly flashed out. Everyone was thinking to themselves that they had finally fought. How was the battle going? Suddenly an angry shout came from below, "Don't run! Absorbing Star's great art." As soon as the 4 words "Absorbing Star's great technique" were uttered, a few people in the crowd had a particularly big reaction. As expected, the 3 silhouettes exploded into 3 clouds of white mist with a bang and shot back into the deep pit below like 3 flowing clouds and sharp arrows. The 3 silhouettes that rushed out did not stop and rushed straight to the sky. From the pit below, a figure quickly chased after them and forcefully inserted himself in between the 3. The figure flickered, and Yu Qianzhou quickly took the storage bags from the waists of the 3 people, letting the 3 exhausted corpses fall freely. Perhaps it was because they had been drained of water. The 3 corpses floated down, giving everyone enough time to appreciate them. There was dead silence all around and everyone revealed a look of disbelief and horror. The 3 corpses were like skeletons and their original appearance could no longer be seen. However, from their clothes, they could vaguely tell that they were Pei Fong and the other 2 people. Pei Fong's fat body was now as thin as firewood. It was also at this moment that countless divine senses couldn't help but quickly scan the 3 corpses, and immediately withdrew after finding no signs of life. The 3 corpses fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. They were really smashed to pieces. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the wreckage on the ground for a long time, unable to move away. They suddenly felt like a dream. They couldn't believe that Pei Fong, Qi Jujuan and Ouyang Da, the 3 masters at the late Huashan stage, died like this. In that instant, it felt as though Yu Qianzhou had forced Pei Fong and the other 2 to flee. In the end, the 3 of them still couldn't escape from Yu Qianzhou's murderous hands. With a single move from Yu Qianzhou, the 3 of them were instantly killed. Too powerful. Nongzhu was the most speechless one. He was a witness to Yu Qianzhou's success in practicing the so-called absorbing stars great technique. At that time in the embassy of Bai Wan in Daong Kingdom, it was he who gave advice to Bai Chongqun, which led to the success of the absorbing stars great technique. He witnessed the power of the absorbing stars great technique for the first time, and it could be said that he was the first person to see the absorbing stars great technique used for the first time. At that time, because Yu Qianzhou didn't know how powerful the absorbing stars great technique was, he begged him to let him try it. At this time, Nongzhu still had a cold sweat on her back when she thought of it. Even Pei Fong and the others couldn't resist it. If she had agreed at that time, wouldn't she have become a dry corpse? Fortunately, she was wise and refused. Nongzhu was the first to look at Yu Qianzhou in the air. She saw that Yu Qianzhou had revealed his true colors and was quickly checking the things in the 3 storage bags. Nongzhu's expression twitched. As soon as Yu Qianzhou stuffed the 3 storage bags into his chest, his eyes immediately met with Nongzhu's, and the joy on his face immediately became serious. "You overestimate yourself." A disdainful snort came from the air. Everyone's eyes were fixed on that direction, and their complicated expressions were full of awe. Yu Qianzhou slowly floated down. The ground below seemed to be preparing for his landing. It surged like waves, swallowing the debris on the ground, and the ruptures that had been blasted out also merged together. A mound of earth tens of meters high instantly rose from the center of Lingfang Valley, steadily supporting him as he fell. Such a scene that was almost like an illusion made all the practitioners think that they had seen a miracle. They were all dumbfounded and looked up at Yu Qianzhou on the top of the mound of earth tens of meters high. Yu Qianchou was very satisfied with the reaction of the crowd, but not very satisfied. His eyes inadvertently came into contact with the blazing sun in the sky, and his heart moved. The metal elements were quietly released into the sky, and then gradually condensed in the process of falling. Little by little they scattered, and the scene was like a golden flower falling from the sky. Behind him gradually condensed a big golden wheel that was as magnificent as a golden rainbow, and his whole body was faintly glowing with golden light. The big golden wheel was like a rainbow, magnificent and majestic, as if it had fallen from the sky, shining with a dreamy golden light. In the big golden wheel, Yu Qianchou was high up in the sky, and under the illumination of the sun his whole body was covered with a layer of hazy golden light, looking extremely holy and holy. The whole Lingfang Valley also seemed solemn in an instant. Such a scene suddenly made everyone think of the Transcendence golden body in the secular temple, and it almost made them want to worship it. Everyone told themselves from the bottom of their hearts that this was an illusion, it must be an illusion. But the Yu Qianchou standing on the mound was so sacred and inviolable, and no one could think of any way to imitate him to such a magical extent. In addition, they already had a sense of awe in their hearts, and subconsciously thought that this might really be a miracle, or an auspicious sign from the heavens when one's cultivation had reached a certain realm. One must know that this was very possible, just like when one's cultivation broke through to the tribulation passing stage and had to suffer a lightning tribulation. The group of people below were really shocked by this scene, and all of them were speechless with exaggerated expressions. Some people even suspected that this was a strange phenomenon when one's cultivation had reached the realm of ascension. It was very possible that Yu Qianchou could kill 3 experts at the final stage of Huashan realm by himself. Damn it! Is this considered as creating a god? Yu Qianchou muttered in his heart, but on the surface he still looked dignified, quietly enjoying the reverent and slightly pious eyes of the group below. Now he finally understood why those bodhisattvas in the temples who held high positions but did not do anything were not afraid of wearing a straight face for a long time. It was because it felt so good to be able to look down on all living beings, be superior, and have people respect you. Now he even thought that it was okay to do more dirty things in the future as long as he put the image of a bodhisattva on the table. Regardless of the level of cultivation, if there was anyone present who felt that something was wrong, it would be Nongzhu, who knew very well about Yu Qianchou's pretense. Immortal Crocodile, who was on the hillside, was also looking at Yu Qianchou dumbfounded. He was speechless. Although he did not know how Yu Qianchou had created such a magical phenomenon, he was sick of it. He felt that this guy was really shameless and could do anything. Nongzhu looked at the glorious image of Yu Qianchou, and her expression twitched endlessly. She felt a toothache. She sneered and said, "I didn't expect that killing 3 experts at the final stage of tribulation passing would make you look like a gold plate. How much longer do you want to play? Do you want me to build a temple for you and place you inside to receive incense and worship?" Hearing this, Yu Qianchou's interest was greatly reduced, and he was no longer in the mood to pretend. He immediately glanced at the people below and said loudly, "Who else doesn't like me? Come at me if you don't like me. I'll still say the same thing. I'll fight you one-on-one at any time." His voice echoed in the valley. Coupled with his transcendence golden body, it made him look even more solemn, sacred, and inviolable. He had easily killed Pei Fong, Qi Jujuan, and Ouyang De, 3 experts at the final stage of soul transformation. Who would dare to provoke him? At this time, in the hearts of the people, he was fully deserving of the title of Torture Master of the Demon Ghost region. This battle had completely established his top position in the cultivation world. Everyone sighed in their hearts. The Demon Ghost region had lasted for a long time, and Yu Qianchou, the former Torture Master, had once again secured the throne of the world's top expert. Humph. Yu Qianchou looked around and snorted coldly. He said, "No one answered? Those who are irrelevant, go back immediately. If you're late, don't leave. Stay in Lingfang Valley for the rest of your life." The lords of the various countries looked at each other and immediately flew into the sky like birds and beasts. Since they couldn't afford to provoke him, they would naturally hide. Chapter 779. In the blink of an eye, there were only a few people left in the Lingfang Valley. Yu Qianchou was high up. Immortal Crocodile was standing on the hillside where Enchantress and Yenyu had fainted, when Lanfeng was holding Lu Yanqing, who was in a coma, and Nongzhu and Li Duxing were staring at Yu Qianchou on the top of the mount. Bing Qingzi and Yan Zhuixing looked gloomy. Others could leave but they knew they couldn't. Yan Zhuixing clenched his fists and stared at Yu Qianchou, gnashing his teeth. Yu Qianchou, you've been fooling me. His heart was filled with rage as he spat out each word. He now deeply suspected that Yu Qianchou was not as unbearable as he had seen him to be. Instead, he had been playing a game of cat and mouse. As long as he jumped up, Yu Qianchou would come out and slap him. At first he couldn't figure it out. But then he remembered that Yu Qianchou already knew that he practiced the demonic book and knew the weakness of the blood escape. But he didn't make it public. It was obvious that he wanted to play with him slowly. This hatred could be said to have no end. Yu Qianchou was stunned. He didn't know when he had fooled this little devil. While thinking, he put away the big golden wheel and the Transcendent's golden body behind him. The mound that was tens of meters high quickly melted into the ground, and he also fell with the height of the mound. Before he spoke, someone already couldn't help but want to get even with Yan Zhuixing. After listening to Wen Lanfeng's narration, Li Duxing suddenly turned back and shouted coldly, "You don't need to know whether I'm fooling you or not. Go to hell." He turned into a shadow and stretched out his claws to attack Yan Zhuixing. Bing Qingzi blocked it without hesitation. The two experts at the late stage of Huashan realm collided with each other again. Shockwaves suddenly rose and exploded. The two of them turned into countless afterimages as they quickly fought against each other. Every fierce exchange of blows was shocking to the hearts of the spectators. Everyone watched the battle silently and found that Bing Qingzi seemed to be fighting desperately. It was the first time for those who knew him to see him like this. Perhaps it was because he knew that he had been implicated by Yan Zhuixing and several soul formation final stage experts were eyeing him with hostility. It would be very difficult for him to have a good ending today. Thus he decided to go all out. Since it was highly likely that he would not be able to keep his life, then he would protect his reputation. Bang! Both of them retreated violently at the same time. They hadn't even stopped retreating when they turned into afterimages and crazily collided with each other. Darking palm. It was Bing Qingzi's voice. The temperature around suddenly dropped and sporadic snowflakes suddenly fell. A wave of palm shadows blew the falling snowflakes and covered Li Duxing, who was shooting over. Humph! Li Duxing snorted and shouted, "1,000 miles of solitude." His gray shadow, like a flowing light, flashed into the palm shadows all over the sky and danced in the air. Suddenly, with a loud bang, the two of them were forced back again. The palm shadows that filled the sky between the two of them slowly disappeared. The scattered snowflakes silently moistened the ground, and the surrounding temperature slowly returned to normal. The Spirit Fragrance Valley was completely silent. Both of them stood still and stared at each other from a distance of nearly 100 meters. Li Duxing looked proud. The claw of his only arm was holding a piece of his chest, which was covered with blood. Bing Qingzi looked at his chest in silence. The blood that gushed out quickly dyed his whole body. The bright red color was extremely dazzling on his white robe. In an instant, the blood that gushed out was forcibly stopped by his profound cultivation. However, there was a big hole on his chest. His beating heart and expanding lungs could be seen clearly. The appearance of his chest was no longer concealed. Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng looked at each other in dismay. Yu Qianchou also secretly stuck out his tongue. 1,000 miles of solitude is really powerful. The combination of speed and strength is almost perfect. I'm afraid that few people in the world can rival him with this one move. No wonder it's said that few people can fight with him for more than 10 moves. Moreover, he only has one arm. If he has 2 arms, it must be even more amazing. Sure enough, a madman must have the capital to be arrogant. Hehe. Bing Qingzi suddenly smiled with a bleak expression. He shook his head and said, "I've long heard that Li Duxing's 1,000 miles of solitude is known for its speed and invincible. Today I see that it really lives up to its reputation. I didn't lose unjustly. Are you being merciful?" In fact, Li Duxing could have killed him with one move just now. But for some reason he was merciful. Li Duxing pointed at Yan Zhuixing with his only arm and said, "I want to kill him, not you." Bing Qingzi laughed bitterly and said, "You're famous for killing. You've washed thousands of miles with blood. I've never heard of anyone who fought with you surviving. This doesn't seem to be your style, does it?" Li Duxing snorted coldly and didn't answer. Wen Lanfeng was probably the only one who knew the reason. When Li Duxing was seriously injured by Changchun and was dying, it was Lu Yanqing who saved him. Lu Yanqing was so kind that she couldn't stand fighting and killing. After saving such a god of killing, Lu Yanqing had repeatedly restrained Li Duxing not to kill indiscriminately. Li Duxing's life was picked up by Lu Yanqing. In order to appreciate her kindness, he respected Lu Yanqing as miss and obeyed her orders. Thus, it became his first honorable business to give up killing. Later, Lu Yanqing felt the miserable fate of those individual cultivators in the cultivation world. So she ordered Li Duxing to live in the ghost village to intimidate all the individual cultivators and give them a place to settle down. Bing Qingzi didn't take it seriously when he didn't answer. He turned to Yan Zhuixing and sighed, "I've died once. My life was given by others. From today on my mission has been completed. I can't help you anymore." After saying that, there was a faint smile on his face as if he was relieved. Seeing Bing Qingzi's chest dripping with blood, Yan Zhuixing roared with his eyes wide open, "Master! I'll avenge you." A black evil spirit emerged from his body at once. He opened his mouth and spat out 7 red lights, which immediately condensed the black evil spirit into 7 vivid flying snakes with ferocious faces. The scene was extremely weird. Among the people present, only Yu Qianchou had seen it before. It was the first time for the others to see it. Their eyes flickered. The thing that Li Duxing was holding loosened and fell to the ground. He wasn't in a hurry to fight. He squinted and said, "Is this the so-called demonic skill? It's really unique. I'd like to have a taste of it today. Boy, don't hesitate to fight." Yu Qianchou raised his eyebrows and flashed to the middle of the two. He looked at Li Duxing indifferently and said, "Senior Li, you'd better take a break." Li Duxing snorted coldly without expressing his opinion. He looked at Yan Zhuixing as if to say, "You have to see who he wants to fight with." "Yu Qianchou, get out of my way." Yan Zhuixing roared, "I'll settle the score with you sooner or later." "Are you out of your mind?" Yu Qianchou looked back at Yan Zhuixing indifferently and said, "Yan Zhuixing, it's all because of you that your master ended up like this today. You can't blame others. We all cheat and kill each other in the cultivation circle. Today you are destined to have no revenge. Don't talk nonsense about revenge. Now it's time to end things between you and me. I'm a man who will do great things. I don't have time to tangle with you." Yan Zhuixing didn't talk nonsense anymore. He waved his hand and shouted angrily, "Kill!" 7 flying snakes shot over like arrows. Yu Qianchou raised his palm and 7 balls of azure flames flew out, just in time to catch the 7 flying snakes that were rushing over. It was the nature of the flying snakes to escape when they met their nemesis. The 7 cyan flames were wriggling violently and changing into various shapes. The 7 cyan flames flew all over Lingfang Valley. The things inside seemed to want to break free. However, ever since Yu Qianchou started cultivating the Guiyuan sword art, even though his cultivation level wasn't high, his divine sense's ability to divide and control things was simply unparalleled in this world. Perhaps even Bai Chongqun wouldn't necessarily be stronger than him. If he didn't try, he wouldn't know. Once he tried, he would definitely give others a shock. This was what it meant to not waste a skill that was painstakingly trained. There would be a day when it would be useful. Within the 7 cyan flames, there were anxious hissing sounds coming from the cyan flames. They were anxious to break free from the cyan flames that were their nemesis. However, the cyan flames followed it like a shadow. It flew everywhere and burned its body crazily. It wasn't afraid of how powerful it was. Everything had its vanquisher. With the sharp eyesight of everyone present, anyone could see that the flying snake was a living creature, and the 7 balls of green flames were completely controlled by Yu Qianchou. Under such circumstances, it was easy to imagine how difficult it was to control the green flames to burn the flying snake. Everyone gasped and they were shocked in their hearts. What a formidable soul-splitting control technique. Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng looked at each other, unable to hide the shock in their eyes. Li Duxing's eyes flickered and Immortal Crocodile looked solemn. Facing the entanglement of the flying snakes and the cyan flames, Yu Qianchou didn't even look at them. He stood there calmly and said indifferently, "Yan Zhuixing, do you want to fight with me with such little ability?" Yan Zhuixing's face instantly turned pale. He gritted his teeth and stared at Yu Qianchou. With such a powerful control skill, he had been hiding his cultivation. He could feel how painful the devilish spirit snakes in the fire were. Under the burning of the cyan flames, the 7 snakes' resistance was sharply declining, and their bodies were shrinking rapidly. If he let it go on, the 7 traces of spirit separated from his primordial spirit would be damaged, and the consequences of the primordial spirit injury would be terrible. Without any hesitation he quickly performed the magic light sweeping shadow, and rushed over like a flowing light. He waved his fist and shouted angrily, "Devil fist!" In terms of speed without teleportation, Yu Qianqiu was definitely not as fast as Yan Zhuixing's magic light sweeping shadow. However, before his opponent moved, he had already predicted the enemy's movement. His figure flashed into the sky, and the two brushed past each other. Yan Zhuixing quickly turned around and bounced up in the air, chasing after Yu Qianqiu and punching him. However, as soon as Yu Qianqiu bounced up, he had already turned around and slapped Yan Zhuixing with his palm. He shouted calmly, absorbing Star's great skill. A cloud of white mist burst out of Yan Zhuixing's body and was absorbed into Yu Qianqiu's palm like a flowing cloud. At the same time, dense cyan flying swords burst out of Yu Qianqiu's sleeves, directly smashing Yan Zhuixing's shriveled body into pieces. Chapter 780. Bing Qingzi, who was watching the battle, saw Yan Zhuixing being blasted into pieces by Yu Qianqiu. His body swayed a little and he was on the verge of collapse. His pale face instantly became even paler. However, Yu Qianqiu seemed to be afraid that Yan Zhuixing would come back to life. The green fire flying swords in his sleeves kept shooting out, chasing after the falling body. In an instant, a large pit was created on the ground by the rapidly shooting flying swords with a crackling sound. Yu Qianqiu jumped to the edge of the pit without any intention of stopping. The flying swords rose and fell rapidly, bombarding the pit. "I was afraid that you wouldn't die, I was afraid that you wouldn't die. Live for this daddy to see again, live for this daddy to see again." Yu Qianqiu stood by the edge of the pit and muttered in a seemingly deranged manner, while controlling the countless flying swords with blue flames. Li Duxing, who didn't know what was going on, looked back at Wen Lanfeng in disbelief. He seemed to be asking Yu Qianqiu what kind of hatred he had for Yan Zhuixing. Yan Zhuixing had been smashed into pieces, but he still didn't let him go. That was too much. Wen Lanfeng, who was holding Lu Yanqing, was speechless. Immortal Crocodile, who was on the hillside, turned to look at the sky. He really didn't want to see it anymore. He sighed in his heart. What a talent. Nongzhu flashed to Yu Qianqiu's side and craned her head to look into the pit. Yan Zhuixing had already been smashed into pieces, and the pit was filled with splashing mud. There was no wreckage at all. Nongzhu asked suspiciously, "He should be dead, right?" Yu Qianqiu said seriously, "It doesn't matter. It's not a bad thing to keep bombarding. This guy's demonic skill is very evil. I've experienced it myself." Hearing this, Nongzhu's face twitched. She looked at the others and found that Bing Qingzi, who had decided not to intervene, seemed to be angry. She coughed and said, "Okay. It's almost time. Can you maintain the demeanor of a torturer of the demon ghost region?" "Got it. I'll stop immediately." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and narrowed his eyes to size them up. He looked like he was determined to exterminate them. As Nongzhu had expected, Bing Qingzi roared crazily, "Yu Qianqiu, don't go too far, or you will be punished by heaven." After all, Yan Zhuixing was his disciple. Seeing someone torturing a corpse like that, he couldn't hold it in anymore. Yu Qianqiu turned back to look at him, his eyebrows raised. Just as he was about to explode in anger, he noticed that the others were looking at him as if he was a monster. Pursing his lips, he waved his sleeves, and the green flame flying swords that were shuttling through the pit instantly disappeared into his sleeves. He patted off the soil that had splashed on his palms and was about to use the earth element to bury the deep pit. However, he frowned and glanced at the pit. He still felt a little uneasy after thinking about it. With a flick of his finger, a green light shot into the deep pit. Nongzhu even stuck her head out to the edge of the pit curiously, wanting to see what he had shot into the pit. Suddenly, with a buzz, a fierce green flame soared into the sky. Nongzhu was so scared that she immediately teleported away. She pulled her hair and shouted, "Are you crazy?" Yu Qianqiu looked at her with disdain as if to say, "Who asked you to stick your head out there?" Then he waved his hand and pointed at the raging flame, suppressing the fire and concentrating the high temperature in the pit. Even the scorching sun in the sky couldn't take away the radiance of the resplendent azure light. Everyone was speechless as they looked at the azure flames burning in the pit. They couldn't hide the disdain in their eyes as they looked at Yu Qianqiu. Hiss. Suddenly, a few intense and sharp hisses were heard in the Lingfang Valley. It was as if metal was rubbing against each other, making everyone's hair stand on end. They quickly looked towards the source of the sound and saw that the 7 balls of green flame had stopped dancing. Obviously, the flying snakes inside had been completely refined. Xianxia waved his hand and the 7 balls of green flame went into his sleeve. At this time he was also slightly relieved. Just as he was about to retract the raging green flame in the pit, the fire in the pit suddenly soared into the sky. Everyone thought that Xianxia was going to play some tricks again, but they saw Xianxia waving his arms towards the pit. His face was red, and the veins on his neck were bulging, as if he was forcibly controlling the green flame to suppress something. Nongzhu frowned. She was the first to notice that something was wrong. Immortal Crocodile suddenly looked back. While everyone was surprised, they suddenly saw the green flame spew out of the pit like an explosion. Xianxia spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated a few steps. Nongzhu flashed to hold him and suddenly turned back to stare at the pit that forced out the green flame. A majestic, ancient and oppressive aura suddenly erupted from the pit, instantly shocking everyone present and causing their hearts to tremble. They saw a ball of black light slowly rising from the deep pit, and there seemed to be a little person in the middle. The black light hung in the air, emitting a thick and ancient aura that shocked the common people. It was like a domineering king looking down on the world. Such a powerful and terrifying aura oppressed everyone so much that they could not even think of resisting. Immortal Crocodile looked at the mysterious black light in shock, and his blank eyes seemed to pull his thoughts back to the distant past. Motherf ****. That dog is here again, Ba. Xianxia pushed Nongzhu away, spat out the bloody saliva in his mouth and turned back to Immortal Crocodile and roared, "Old monster, why are you in a daze? He's not your lover, quickly kill him. Otherwise that bastard Yan Zhuixing will come back to life again." He exerted all his strength. Swoosh. A huge green broadsword of more than 10 meters appeared in his hand. He flew up and with a cry of awe, he slashed at the mysterious black light with all his strength. At this moment, everyone came to their senses because of Xianxia's roar, and they knew that the consequences were extremely serious. Nongzhu's bamboo flute whistled out, when Lanfeng quickly put Lu Yanqing on the ground, and his huge silver sword shot out, setting off waves of Gangqi. A flying sword also flashed out of Li Duxing's storage bag. Everyone focused their attacks on the mysterious black light. The mysterious black light seemed to have sensed that someone was going to attack it, and it emitted black light thorns directly facing the attacks from all directions. Bang, bang, bang. A series of loud noises sounded and the waves of Gangqi surged, making people feel that the world was changing. The earth shook and the towering Medicine Hut mountain collapsed in the shaking. Each of the 4 attacking silhouettes spat out a mouthful of blood with a puff sound. They were violently thrown far away. Bang, bang, bang. All of them sank deep into the mountains surrounding the Spirit Fong Valley. It gave people the impression that the stronger one's attack was, the greater the rebound force would be. The huge green fire broadsword collapsed at the moment of the counterattack, and so did the bamboo flute and the flying sword. The 4 attacking weapons were all destroyed in the blink of an eye. Bing Qingzi stared at the mysterious black light in the sky in disbelief. Lu Yanqing was still lying on the ground, but her body was covered with a thick layer of dust. The 2 people who didn't attack seemed to be unharmed. The 4 people who were shaken away pulled out of the deep mountain, and only Xianxia crawled out. Fortunately, the 4 people were not weak and they were all masters of the Huashan realm. Although they were all badly injured, it was not fatal. After the 4 people came out, they all stared at the mysterious black light in the sky with blood dripping from their mouths. Xianxia stretched out his hand to wipe his mouth and nose, but the blood kept flowing out as if it was free. The mysterious black light flickered, and just as it was about to fly away, a figure suddenly appeared out of nowhere to stop it. Immortal Lord Crocodile's arms turned into 2 huge rough palms, and he directly held the black light in his palms. The black light seemed to be unwilling to be controlled and it surged violently. Immortal Lord Crocodile gripped it tightly with a serious expression, and they were in a deadlock. Suddenly, Immortal Lord Crocodile let out an angry roar, and forcibly dragged the mysterious black light down from the sky. The people below were shocked. They didn't expect that the mysterious black light, which the 4 of them couldn't handle together, would be dragged down by him alone. Except for Xianxia, everyone else gasped. They didn't know who this person was and how could he have such a profound cultivation. However, Everyone could tell that the pair of hands that had thrown the escaping Yan Zhuixing back were the same pair of giant hands. Yu Qianzhou's nose was bleeding profusely as he waved his arms excitedly and said, "Good job, old monster. Kill it for me." Perhaps he was too excited, but then he clutched his chest with a pained expression and couldn't shout anymore. Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng remembered that a certain guy had mentioned looking for help in the South Sea purple bamboo forest, and they looked at the ashen-faced Yu Qianzhou at the same time. They didn't know where this strange guy had found such an expert. At this moment, the scenery between heaven and earth suddenly became a little dim. Everyone looked up into the sky and found that a hazy gray fog had suddenly appeared in the sky above Spirit Fong Valley. It wasn't actually thick, but it seemed to cover the blazing sun's radiance. What was inconceivable was that a pair of slender and huge eyes suddenly appeared in the hazy gray fog, and those cold and merciless eyes looked down indifferently. Everyone felt that it was an illusion, but they inexplicably felt that the pair of eyes contained an awe-inspiring and unquestionable majesty. At the same time that the strange phenomenon appeared in the sky, the mysterious black light that Immortal Lord Crocodile was slowly dragging down seemed to have infinite power in an instant, and the light suddenly soared. Bang! The two huge hands that Immortal Lord Crocodile had conjured instantly collapsed. After the black light broke free, it slammed into Immortal Lord Crocodile, who had already been sent flying. Bang! Puff! Immortal Lord Crocodile's figure was instantly sent flying into the deep mountains in the distance, and a loud rumble could be faintly heard in the distance. Everyone stared at this scene with their mouths agape. After the mysterious black light hit Immortal Lord Crocodile, it instantly turned into a stream of light and quickly disappeared. The group of people was stunned for a long time, and suddenly found that the sky had returned to normal. They couldn't help but look up, and the gray fog in the sky had disappeared. The pair of slender, cold and merciless eyes had also disappeared, as if nothing had happened just now. Chapter 781. At this moment Lingfeng Valley had already lost its beautiful appearance. It was full of desolation and not a single plant could be seen. The ground seemed to have been plowed a few times. It was like a chicken that had shed its feathers. It was so naked that it was somewhat unsightly to look at. The Medicine Cottage, the landmark mountain in Lingfeng Valley, had also collapsed. None of the people present had expected that the consequences of killing Yan Zhuixing would be like this, especially the mysterious black light. It was simply unbelievable. It seemed to be much higher than Yan Zhuixing's cultivation. How could this be? Everyone was full of doubts. When Lanfeng was the first to wake up among the dumbfounded crowd. His skin had basically turned black from the inside out, and he seemed to be shrouded in a layer of death qi. The first thing he did after waking up was to rush to where Lu Yanqing used to be, dig up the soil and dig Lu Yanqing out. Absorbing Star's great skill. Yu Qianzhou's shout shocked everyone. They all looked over and saw a dried corpse slowly falling down in front of him. When it hit the ground it was smashed into pieces. The dead man was none other than Bing Qingzi. Nongzhu flashed over and stood beside Yu Qianzhou. Looking at the wreckage on the ground, she covered her slightly uncomfortable chest and frowned. "Are you a mad dog? Bite whoever you see. He has already given up. Why did you still kill him?" Yu Qianzhou raised his hand to wipe the nosebleed on Daoist's face and said ferociously, "If Yan Zhuixing is completely dead, I don't mind letting him go. The problem is that he ran away again. This old guy is most likely to be of great help to him. He can't be left alive." Nongzhu sighed speechlessly. 4 experts at the late stage of Huashan realm died in the Battle of Lingfeng Valley, and all of them died in the hands of this guy. From today on, this guy can be regarded as the torture envoy of the demon region. With his means, there was no need for her to worry anymore. It seemed that Bai Chongqun did not choose the wrong person. Nongzhu turned her head and asked suspiciously, "What is your cultivation level now? Why do I feel that you have reached the Huashan realm?" Yu Qianzhou had a messy face and a head full of braids. He looked around and grinned evilly, looking exactly like a member of the beggars' gang. His sinister smile suddenly came to an abrupt halt as he cried out in alarm. He teleported to the original hillside and looked around, not knowing where the Enchantress of 100 Charms and Yen Yu were buried. He immediately used the earth magic art and quickly sensed the location where the 2 women were buried. The soil there retreated like a tide, revealing the 2 women lying inside. He quickly checked the condition of the 2 women, and after discovering that they were fine, he heaved a sigh of relief and sat down on the ground. Nongzhu followed them. When she saw the two girls, she looked slightly unhappy, but she still asked, "How is it?" "He's fine, but he's being controlled by the demonic eye. I don't know how to get rid of it." The worried Yu Qianzhou suddenly paused and said to Nongzhu, "Keep an eye on them for me. I'll be back soon." Then he flew into the deep mountains in the distance, in the direction where Immortal Crocodile was sent flying. Flying in that direction, he easily found Immortal Crocodile. The target was very obvious. On a collapsed mountain, a battered and exhausted Immortal Crocodile was sitting cross-legged, healing his injuries. Before Yu Qianzhou landed, he opened his eyes and looked up, then closed them again. Yu Qianzhou knew that he was healing, so he landed beside him and did not disturb him. After a while, he slowly exhaled and opened his eyes. As soon as Immortal Crocodile opened his eyes, he looked at Yu Qianzhou with a serious expression and said, "The demonic god." Yu Qianzhou squatted beside him and was stunned. He asked in surprise, "What's wrong?" Immortal Crocodile shook his head and sighed. That Yan Zhuixing is indeed a person blessed by the demonic god. The demonic god made a move just now, and that aura was the aura of a god. Yu Qianzhou smiled sheepishly. In fact, he had long guessed that Yan Zhuixing was a person blessed by the demonic god. He just deliberately hid it, mainly because he was afraid of scaring this guy. Now that this old monster was injured, he really felt a little embarrassed. He continued to fool him. "That's impossible. Aren't you still fine? If the demonic god really made a move, I'm afraid you would already be dead. How could you still be sitting here talking to me?" Immortal Crocodile smiled bitterly. "The demonic god doesn't even bother to fight me. We are not on the same level at all. He only indirectly made a move to warn me. If he really made a move directly, I would not be alive. What kind of person is the demonic god? He is a world-shaking genius of a generation. According to Immortal Emperor Jin Tai, who had come into contact with the gods, even in the divine realm, the demonic god is a well-known figure. How can we hope to reach him?" Yu Qianzhou laughed and patted him on the shoulder. "That's right. He is a god. Why would he bother with small fry like us? He will do his own thing, we will do ours. What's there to be emotional about? There's no need to be afraid of him." Immortal Crocodile's expression twitched. "That's a demonic god. How can we not be afraid? Who cares? Just don't provoke him next time. If we can't afford to provoke him, we can at least hide from him." Yu Qianzhou tried his best to squeeze out a smile on his face to comfort him. However, the more he smiled, the more anxious he became. Immortal Crocodile immediately rolled his eyes. "You want a next time? You really think that the demonic god is just a decoration? You will die. Next time, do it yourself. Don't call me. I can't afford to provoke him. Haha. Who would take the initiative to provoke him? Let's talk about the future in the future. Let's get down to business first." That Yu Qianzhou coughed. "Old monster, let me ask you something. Do you have any way of finding out where Yan Zhuixing's primordial spirit escaped to? You still want to do it?" Immortal Crocodile stood up and sneered. "Provoking the demonic god again. He's not to be trifled with. Don't cause trouble until the demonic god breaks through the void and arrives personally. When that happens, you won't even have time to cry. No one in this world can protect you. Damn it. I don't care if he's a demonic god or a bird god. So what if he's a demonic god?" Yu Qianzhou was enraged. He stood up and waved his arms, shouting, "Even if I don't go looking for that bastard will come looking for me for revenge sooner or later. Rather than that, I might as well take advantage of his weakness and kill him." Immortal Crocodile snorted. "If you really want to kill him, why didn't you use the divine sword just now? Before the demonic god makes his move, that black light shouldn't be able to withstand the power of the divine sword. I guarantee that Yan Zhuixing's body and soul will be destroyed. Isn't that the end of it? Divine sword." Yu Qianzhou was stunned. His temper disappeared and he stood there dumbfounded. After a long time, he suddenly beat his chest and howled. "Damn it. Why didn't you say earlier that the divine sword could break it? I forgot." Immortal Crocodile sneered. "If I had known that he was protected by the demonic god, I would have definitely told you that the divine sword could break it. But I wouldn't have come. I'm really impressed with myself now. I actually fought with the demonic god." Yu Qianzhou immediately became listless. It was all because of his own thoughts. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have hidden it from him. After a long silence, he asked weakly, "Is there any way to find Yan Zhuixing's escaped primordial spirit?" Immortal Crocodile shook his head. You overestimate me. Even the powerful demonic god isn't omnipotent. The human world is so big. It won't be easy to find him unless he shows himself. Maybe, since the demonic god wants to protect him, he might use a great technique to break through the void and take his primordial spirit away. Even if he didn't leave, his body has been destroyed. He shouldn't be able to cause any trouble in the short term. Sigh. I hope so. Xianxia sighed and waved his hand. Forget it. Since we can't find him, forget it. The most important thing now is to find a way to get rid of the people controlled by the demonic eye. The celestial realm and the demon realm had a great war before. There should be a way to get rid of it, right? Otherwise, with the power of the demonic eye, the demon realm wouldn't have been sealed, right? The demonic eye is the demonic eye. It's one of the demonic eye's moves that can control people. It's called demonic eye ecstasy. The two cannot be confused. Demonic eye ecstasy is just an evil art in the celestial realm's terms. It's not the most powerful art of the demonic eye. Demonic eye ecstasy is powerful because if the controlled person doesn't expose himself, it will be difficult for others to find out. In fact, once discovered, it's not difficult to get rid of it, Immortal Crocodile said slowly. Xianxia's eyes lit up. Not difficult to get rid of? That means you have a way to get rid of it? You said it yourself. The immortals and demons have fought before. Naturally, there is a way to get rid of it. Otherwise, if the people of the celestial realm are controlled, what's the point of fighting? We can just admit defeat. Immortal Crocodile said in a low voice, there are many ways to get rid of it. The demonic eye mainly controls people's primordial spirits. Many people in the celestial realm have extraordinary attainments in primordial spirit cultivation and can easily get rid of the control. In fact, the controlled person can also get rid of the control themselves. As long as their cultivation surpasses the caster, their primordial spirit will also be stronger, and they can usually get rid of it. There's also the simplest and most effective way. Kill the caster completely and the spell will naturally get rid of it. Xianxia rubbed his chin and said suspiciously, the last two methods can definitely be rejected. You're a dignified immortal lord, so you must have extraordinary attainments in primordial spirit cultivation, right? Then, don't tell me to get rid of the control and bring them to the celestial realm. I can't do that at the moment. You know the reason better than I do. Although my primordial spirit is strong, I've never dabbled in this aspect. I can kill people but I can't save them. Immortal Crocodile said teasingly, there's a good way. You can find the caster and ask him to get rid of it himself. Xianxia's face immediately darkened. He said in a low voice, after talking for so long, it's all nonsense. Immortal Crocodile waved his hand and interrupted him. I already said that there are many ways to get rid of it. What's the rush? Let me finish. In this world, there is a kind of person who cultivates magic arts that are mighty and righteous. They are born to be the nemesis of evil and crooked cultivators. All ghosts and monsters are just small tricks that can't see the light in front of them. A mere demon eye ecstasy can easily break them. Xianxia pulled a long face and said, don't tell me you want me to go to the celestial realm to look for it again. I admit that I don't have that ability. Are you happy now? Immortal Crocodile said in surprise, why do you need to go to the celestial realm to look for it? Is your master's morality technique not strong enough? With your master's methods, it's easy to get rid of this little spell. Chapter 782. Morality Technique? Xianxia's expression froze as he thought of Bai Changchun's evil means. After a moment of hesitation, he slowly shook his head and said, old monster, you'd better help me think of another way. He had promised Bai Changchun that he would not look for him again. If he broke his promise, he might not be able to find Bai Changchun again. It was better not to do this unless he had no other choice. Immortal Lord Crocodile was slightly disappointed. In fact, he really wanted to interact more with people like Bai Changchun. Such people had extraordinary insights in cultivation. If he interacted more with experts with such high comprehension, he would often be enlightened with just a word from them and solve the problems that had plagued him for many years. He thought that Xianxia could not find Bai Changchun, so he took out a small bottle from the storage bracelet and handed it to him. Take it. Xianxia took it and was stunned. He asked, what's this? Immortal Crocodile said disapprovingly, Spirit Awakening Pill. It can expel evil spirits and remove the control of the vital spirit by demonic arts. Damn. Why didn't you take out such a good thing earlier? What are you talking about? Yu Qianchou turned around and flew directly to Lingfang Valley. When he returned to Lingfang Valley, he saw Lu Yanqing standing beside Li Duxing and Wen Lanfeng. Nongzhu also brought the two unconscious women to them. Lu Yanqing had short hair and tearful eyes, but it did not diminish her peerless elegance. Instead, it showed another kind of unique charm. She was really a natural beauty. She was staring at the collapsed medicine hut with tearful eyes. Yu Qianchou landed beside them and looked at Lu Yanqing from head to toe. Although he was a little annoyed, he was still amazed. Yu Qianchou coldly snorted and said, "Seniors, you must keep an eye on this crazy woman. Her good intentions are not repaid and she keeps biting people. I now suspect that she has already been controlled by Yan Zhuixing's demonic eye. Seniors, you should be careful." Wen Lanfeng smiled bitterly and suddenly bowed deeply to Yu Qianchou. "It's all in the past. You don't have to mention it anymore. She was just anxious and confused, but now she has sobered up." What? Yu Qianchou pointed at Lu Yanqing and turned his face. F***ck. I risked everything to save her, but she turned around and tried to kill me, and now I can't even talk? Aren't you guys being too overbearing? Wen Lanfeng was rendered speechless by his words. Li Duxing, on the other hand, appeared to be very calm. He closed his eyes and paid no attention. Lu Yanqing slowly stepped forward and bowed to Yu Qianchou. "It's all my fault." Before she finished speaking, a large string of tears immediately fell. Yu Qianchou's anger was almost extinguished and he couldn't vent his anger. He cursed in his heart, "Beautiful women always take advantage of others." Looking at the lifeless Wen Lanfeng, he coughed and changed the topic. "Great magic Dr. Lu, don't cry anymore. It's all in the past. Something useful. Senior Wen is almost dead because of you. Hurry up and find a way to save her. Don't always let the person who cares for you get hurt." Then he stopped talking to her, walked to the two unconscious women, and showed them the small bottle in his palm. As soon as he opened the bottle, everyone immediately smelled a fragrance. As the fragrance entered their lungs, they were refreshed. They knew the thing in the bottle was not simple. Yu Qianchou poured out a white elixir the size of a soybean into his palm. Nongzhu beside him asked curiously, "What is this?" "Awakening elixir. It said that it can remove the control of the magic eye. I don't know if it works." Yu Qianchou looked around with the small pill in his hand. He was also confused. "Why is it so small?" Wen Lanfeng's attention was on Lu Yanqing. Hearing this, he suddenly turned around and stared at the thing in Yu Qianchou's hand. He was worried about Wen Rui. If he died, Wen Rui would be the only pillar of the Wen family. Lu Yanqing and Li Duxing also looked at him. They saw Yu Qianchou pour out two elixirs in his hand. Then he opened the lips of Enchantress and Yenyu and put one elixir into their mouths. Then he forced the elixir into their abdomen to help them refine. When the elixir was gone, a faint red mist rose from the heads of the two women, with a slight smell of blood, and slowly dissipated in the air. Looking at the two women who were still in a coma, Yu Qianchou was a little hesitant. He didn't know if it would work, so he tried to wake Enchantress up first. Enchantress woke up slowly. The first thing she saw was Yu Qianchou, who was staring at her with wide eyes. Her eyes fell on Yu Qianchou's head. She was stunned and said, "Why do you have so many braids on your head?" The people around looked at each other. Yu Qianchou was stunned. Then he patted his chest and said with a smile, Well, it means you are good to say that." But at this moment, Enchantress suddenly exclaimed, Yan Zhuixing is here." She suddenly stood up. Yu Qianchou turned around and said with a smile, "Don't worry, he has already left." As he spoke, he patted Yenyu to wake her up. The latter's reaction was almost exactly the same as Enchantress's. Yu Qianchou immediately told the two of them what had happened. Only then did the two women let out a sigh of relief with lingering fear. But Yu Qianchou stretched his waist in a comfortable mood and sighed, "This trip was not in vain. I finally solved the problem." But before he put down his hand, a soft and fragrant body rushed into his arms and hugged him. She directly used her fragrant lips to block his mouth. But Yu Qianchou's eyes widened. When he realized it was Yenyu, he quickly pushed her away. He frowned and said seriously, "Owner Yen, we are not that familiar with each other, right? Dead man. You still dare to lie to me." Yenyu was shy. She punched Yu Qianchou's chest and then stuck her lips to Yu Qianchou's without any scruples. Knowing that her sweetheart came from afar to save her Her heart was as sweet as drinking honey. Now she was ready to risk everything. She just wanted to kiss him at all costs, no matter where they were. Damn it. Since I've been exposed, I'm ready to risk everything. Xianxia hugged her tightly. They kissed passionately in front of everyone, which stunned the group of people. This action was a little out of touch with this era. Enchantress's smiling face hid a little loneliness. Li Duxing, Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing turned their heads to one side. Only Nongzhu's face was a little dark. No one could be happy to see their son-in-law kissing another woman in front of them. Enough. Don't you know where you are? Nongzhu finally couldn't help shouting angrily. They finally separated, breathing heavily. After looking at each other and smiling, all the grudges disappeared. They couldn't help kissing passionately again. After several times they stopped. Yanyu stared at him with a blushing face. She bit her attractive red lips and said, "Your braid is so ugly. Don't leave me alone again. I'll comb your braid." Huh. Xianxia raised her pink chin with a sinister smile and said, "I like it." Yanyu immediately punched him again. People beside them couldn't help shivering and felt goosebumps all over. When Lanfeng coughed and came over to disturb them with embarrassment, he said, "That, Xianxia, can you give me a refreshing pill? When Rue hasn't removed the control of the magic eye yet." "No problem." Xianxia was in a good mood. He took out a small bottle and poured out a pill for him. When Lanfeng carefully put it away as if he had received a treasure. Nongzhu came over with a sullen face. She stared at Wen Lanfeng and said seriously, "How is your injury?" "I think it's a big trouble. Let Lu Yan see it in the morning. If you need help, take advantage of the fact that everyone is here." She glanced at Xianxia and thought that this guy had a lot of treasures. He could even remove the control of the magic eye. Maybe he also had a panacea to save Wen Lanfeng. Xianxia, who was holding hands with Yanyu and flirting, didn't know that Nongzhu had paid attention to him. When Lanfeng smiled bitterly and said, "The blood devil palm is really not simple. The blood in my body is about to solidify. Plus I was injured just now. I'm afraid there's no way to save it. I can't hold on for a few days. Don't bother anymore." Hearing that Wen Lanfeng was going to die, Xianxia was embarrassed to flirt with Yanyu anymore. He looked at Wen Lanfeng with great sympathy and concern. Lu Yanqing, who was silent in sorrow, suddenly raised her head. It seemed that she just remembered that Wen Lanfeng had been hit by Yan Zhuixing's blood devil palm. She hurriedly grabbed Wen Lanfeng's hand and anxiously said, "There must be a way. There must be a way. I must have a way to cure you. I must be able to cure you." There was a tremble in her voice. It was the fear of losing the most precious thing. When Lanfeng looked at her quietly. This was the first time that she took the initiative to hold her hand. Although it was to check her injury, it could be seen that she still cared about her very much. Unknowingly, when Lanfeng's eyes became a little moist, he slowly turned his head to the side and inadvertently 2 streaks of tears slid down his skinny cheeks. How many years of unwavering love, how many people laughed at him behind his back, but his sincerity had never wavered. For her, he could give up everything because in this world, there would never be anyone who would treat her better than himself. Today's scene was what he had dreamed of, and he had always hoped that one day she would take the initiative to hold his hand, but wasn't this day a little too late? If only he had a little more time to reminisce about this moment, it would have been good. Why did it have to happen when she was about to reach the end of her life? Fate was so cruel. People who had reached Wen Lanfeng's level of cultivation would naturally have some understanding of their own injuries. She estimated that she was almost there. Only Lu Yanqing, who was treating Wen Lanfeng, was anxiously murmuring, "I must be able to cure you. I must be able to cure you." Everyone else was silent. It seemed that they had even forgotten to breathe. They all noticed the tears on Wen Lanfeng's thin and dark face. This scene shocked everyone. Wen Lanfeng, a top expert in the cultivation world, was actually crying. Chapter 783. When Lanfeng raised his face as high as possible. He didn't want the tears on his face to fall, nor did he want Lu Yanqing to see it. Yes, Lu Yanqing really didn't see it now. She was burning with anxiety, and the only thing she was thinking about was how to cure Wen Lanfeng. She took out a set of instruments from the storage bag and pricked Wen Lanfeng's finger with a silver needle. For Xianxia, it was like a test. However, Lu Yanqing didn't see it, but it didn't mean that others didn't see it. His head was raised higher and higher as he faced the sunlight. causing the tear stains and teardrops on his face to become more and more conspicuous. They sparkled and sparkled on his skinny and dark face, as clear as his heart towards Lu Yanqing, without any impurities in his eyes. Anyone who saw Wen Lanfeng at this time would be moved. The two women, Enchantress and Yen Yu, couldn't stand it anymore. They turned around quietly and sobbed secretly. Their silent tears were much stronger than Wen Lanfeng's. They kept wiping their tears, but they couldn't dry them. The men were speechless. It seemed that they understood many things they didn't understand before at this moment. The bitterness in these 2 lines of tears was not something that outsiders could understand. Which of the men present didn't ridicule Wen Lanfeng in their hearts before? But these 2 lines of tears made them understand that Wen Lanfeng was not stupid. He knew what sarcasm was, and he knew that he was an idiot in the eyes of outsiders. However, his love was more persistent than anyone else. His love was purer than anyone else, and his love was more thorough than anyone else. He was determined to protect his true love. He would rather give up everything, even his own life, than let his beloved suffer a little grievance. Was this behavior stupid or not? Was it rational? Anyway, these men admitted that none of them could do it. But because of today, they remembered what was called sincerity, and incomparable sincerity. Damn it. Why are you crying? You make me feel uncomfortable. Yu Qianchou scratched his scalp with a strange expression. Li Duxing took a deep breath and slightly closed his eyes. His face looked more indifferent. Nongzhu looked at Lu Yanqing, who was getting more and more busy, and suddenly frowned. She seemed to have gradually lost her sense of propriety. She immediately shouted in a deep voice, "Lu Yanqing, what the hell are you doing? Can you cure the blood devil palm or not? If you can't, we'll think of something else. Wen Lanfeng doesn't have that much time for you to waste." Lu Yanqing shivered, and the thing in her hand fell to the ground. She squatted down and picked something up and said in a trembling voice, Can cure?" Nongzhu asked curiously, "If you can cure it, why are you still busy? Hurry up and treat it. If there's anything you need, just tell us. We'll think of a way to solve it." Wen Lanfeng took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention to him and quickly wiped away the tears on his face. He looked at Lu Yanqing and said with a faint smile, "I guess there must be something difficult? Since that's the case, then forget it. There's no need to force yourself." "Bullshit. What do you mean by don't force yourself?" Nongzhu stared at Lu Yanqing and shouted, "Lu Yanqing, stand up and talk to me. What's going on?" Lu Yanqing slowly stood up, pinching the thing in her hand. It seemed that she was very hard and her knuckles had turned white. Under the repeated urging of Nongzhu, she finally said with a pale face, "Make a few elixirs and I'll cast a spell, and then I can. She had been there all the time, but there had been no result, which made them very anxious. Nongzhu touched her forehead and did not know whether to laugh or cry. She said, "Can what? Tell me quickly. Is Wen Lanfeng's life so unbearable in your eyes?" The last sentence was a little heavy. Lu Yanqing immediately shook her head and then bit her lip and said, "Force out the blood in the body together with the suppressed blood devil palm, provided that we find 2 people with similar blood types to draw their blood for Wen Lanfeng. First wash the whole body with blood and then change the whole body blood again." Nongzhu was stunned and doubted, "Is this method feasible? First wash and then change all the blood in Wen Lanfeng's body. How much blood will it take? Then, won't the blood of those 2 people be drained? Wouldn't it be exchanging 2 lives for one?" Now he vaguely knew why Lu Yanqing did not answer. This woman never killed people. What was the difference between this way of saving people and letting her kill people? There's really no need. Wen Lanfeng stared at Lu Yanqing and said with a faint smile, "Yanqing, your master is famous. In this life, you uphold the medical ethics passed down by your master and only save people. Although you have cultivated until now, you have never killed a person, and I have never even heard of you fighting with anyone. You are like an orchid in an empty valley in this deep mountain. How can I let you kill? How can I let you feel uneasy for the rest of your life?" "Humph." Yu Qianchou sneered and said, "Not necessarily. Didn't you see that she was alive and kicking and wanted to kill me?" Nongzhu said with a sullen face, "Why are you meddling?" "Fine." Yu Qianchou said, "I won't meddle in this matter even if you ask me to." Wen Lanfeng smiled bitterly and stretched out his thin hands towards Lu Yanqing's shoulders. Just when he was about to touch them, he stopped in the air. He was used to holding Lu Yanqing when she was in a coma. Now that she was awake, he was afraid that she would be unhappy. After a moment of hesitation, seeing that Lu Yanqing did not object, he slowly put it on her shoulder. The man and the woman looked at each other and suddenly showed a knowing smile. Lu Yanqing suddenly said with certainty, "I can do it, I must do it, I will cure you." When Lan Feng put his hands on her fragrant shoulders and shook his head with a smile. "Your hands are the cleanest and most benevolent hands in the entire cultivation world. They are as pure as your heart. I won't let them be tainted by killing because of me." Lu Yanqing took his arm and said anxiously, "As long as I can save you, I am willing to do anything. But I refuse." When Lan Feng smiled and said, "I don't want you to feel guilty because of me." "That's bullshit." Nongzhu gritted her teeth and said, "Fine, you are all the kindest people in the cultivation world. We are all evil people." Then she turned around and said, "You Qianchou, they all want to sacrifice themselves to be good people. Can you think of a way to help them?" Yu Qianchou was also gritting his teeth. When he heard this, he was stunned and said, "How can I help them?" Nongzhu immediately pointed to Wen Lanfeng and said, "Think of a way to save him. Won't they save killing people?" Yu Qianchou rolled his eyes and said, "I don't know anything about the blood devil palm. How can I save him?" Nongzhu winked and gestured, "Do you have any elixirs? Like the spirit sobering pill just now." "You're crazy. Do you think I run a pharmacy? Where did you get so many elixirs?" Yu Qianchou waved his hand and snappily said, "No, you just told me not to get involved. You really don't want to save him." Nongzhu said harshly. Yu Qianchou immediately raised his eyebrows and sneered, "What? Do you want a one-on-one fight?" He was not afraid of Nongzhu now. He would fight with her any time. You two don't worry about me." When Lan Feng stopped them and looked at Yu Qianchou and said, "Yu Qianchou, I really want to ask you for a favor. I hope you can help me." Yu Qianchou was stunned. If it was Nongzhu, he would not mind arguing with her. But when Lan Feng, a dying man, was begging him, it was really hard for him to refuse. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Forget it. You don't have to beg me. I'll try my best." "No, you misunderstand. I don't want you to save my life. Something else. As long as you can promise me this, I'd rather die than regret it." When Lan Feng smiled calmly and said, "You're the only one in the world who can do this. Others may not be as good as you." Yu Qianchou and Nongzhu looked at each other. The others were also confused. Yu Qianchou asked suspiciously, "What's the matter? I can't guarantee that I can do it. Tell me about it first." His old habit was to leave a way out for himself first. When Lan Feng said with a free and easy face, "Lu Yanqing accidentally said that your music is unparalleled in the world. There are only a few people in the world who can get a song from you. Once it comes from you, it's a peerless masterpiece, enough to be sung for thousands of years. She is very envious of you. I hope you can also write a song for her. It's my last gift for her." Everyone's eyes were fixed on Yu Qianchou. Temptress was one of the people who knew Yu Qianchou's attainments in this aspect. She could not help but show a very expectant look. Yen Yu's eyes were full of little stars. She had begun to plan in her heart to ask Yu Qianchou to write a song for her. On the other hand, Yu Qianchou's face turned green and twitched. After a long time, he took a deep breath and said, "Senior Wen, don't make things difficult for me. I'd better think of a way to heal your injuries. This is more important to me than curing my injury. It's my last wish." When Lan Feng sighed, Nongzhu immediately became furious and shouted, "Wish my ass. When Lan Feng, you're out of your mind. What the hell are you talking about?" All the people were speechless. Lu Yanqing anxiously pulled Wen Lan Feng and said, "I just said it casually. Don't take it seriously. The most important thing is to cure your injury first." "Yes. Damn. No wonder I felt it was familiar." Yu Qianchou suddenly clapped his hands excitedly and shouted, attracting everyone's attention. He laughed and said, "Senior Lu, the method of blood exchange you mentioned actually doesn't require people to die. Think about it. Why do you have to find 2 people? Can't you find 200 people? Everyone will be fine and we can save people. What do you think of this method?" He suddenly thought of this method because he suddenly thought of the blood donation in his previous life. Wasn't it just gathering a little to make a lot? For people in this era, although the method was simple, the idea was very advanced. Generally, they would not think of this. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Lu Yanqing again, looking forward to her reply. Lu Yanqing's eyes lit up and she said in surprise,